it almost feels like trade deadline time. That's the feeling I get. This is either strictly business, where the Blues are going to come out and blow out the Colorado Avalanche tonight and go on a 4-game run before the Four Nations, or it's going to continue to down spiral the other way, because it just seems like a very interesting tone around this team right now. And when you start losing big players, this is typically how it sorts itself out.
Wheels it around to the near side, bounces it up to McCarr. McCarr in, wrist shot, score! 4-0 Colorado. And they may have to look down the bench at Jordan Bennington at some point here. Or you just say, Joel Hofer, it's your game. Blues fall to the Avs here tonight by a score of 5-0. Shutout now for the second time this season, and they head to Utah to try and snap a 4-game losing streak and a positive vibe.
That's not what it was supposed to look like. The president of hockey operations comes out, calls out the entire team. He ends up placing one of your top 9 forwards on waivers. You get bag skated by your head coach. He's barking at you the whole practice. They do what they call mountain climbers, something like that, whatever it was that they're going through as they're skating till basically he says, again.
Yeah, it was Herb Brooks in the movie Miracle.
Yeah. And then they go out there and play what might have been their worst period of the entire NHL season. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The Blues allowed 4 first-period goals. It was the first time they've done that all season long. That took place on Friday night against the Avs. They surrendered 21 shots in that period. Also the first time they've done that so far this year. They needed to go out there and give what probably was going to require their best period of the season, Alex, to inspire any kind of confidence in fans. They had a few days off. It was a perfect opportunity for them to just go out there and look inspired. And instead, they put on tape what might have been their worst period of the season. Yes, I know they won last night, and frankly, I don't care. Because this team is no longer about any one performance. They won 2-1. They went out to Utah, played okay. They looked, I suppose, like the better team for the majority of that game. But, Alex, this team now is right at 500 once again, and they're going nowhere fast. They're closer to a top 5 selection than they are to a playoff spot. What'd you make of their performance, especially on Friday night, given what had taken place last week prior to that game?
It was awful. I mean, Friday night, and to show you how bad it was, I think Jim Montgomery officially hit his breaking point, because throughout that entire game, Jim Montgomery was barking at the entire bench. I think by the end of the first period, Joe said his face was just like Kool-Aid Man red, and that was from just yelling at his team, because you had 3 days off, 2 days where you were bag skated. They focused heavily on special teams, and none of it looked like they were prepared for that game against Colorado. Special teams was awful. You had a slow start once again because they scored in the first 5 minutes. Everything about what the Blues did on Friday showcased what the concern has been really since that Calgary Flames back-to-back win, because whatever took place between that second win against Calgary and that Utah Hockey Club game is how things really fell apart. And Friday was just another picture of it. Justin Falk said after the game, I don't know, we weren't prepared. We weren't ready to bring energy. We weren't mentally focused on the Colorado Avalanche. But whatever it is, we aren't ready for these hockey games. And it's been a common theme for this Blues team. I was surprised of how they came out last night against Utah. I was.
Oh, yesterday.
Yeah,
They're talking about Friday.
You're getting surprised. Mad, damn it. You haven't been here. You're getting mad at me already. I was surprised at how they came out versus Utah, because this team has fallen into the trap for me of I don't know what to expect every single night. And these last 6 games, it's been, okay, I know what to expect. They're probably going to score first. And when they score first, you're going to be chasing a hockey game. And chasing a hockey game is super ugly for this team. They did something different. I don't know what it was, but BK's where exactly I'm at. 1 win doesn't mean anything to me. Was it good? Absolutely, because it would have been worse to get into a 5-game losing streak. Talk to me when you win 3 or more in a row, because then I can at least look at the team and say, okay, what's different from what you did in these last 7 games versus these last 3?
So we talked about this over the last few years, and you just mentioned it, chasing the game, right? That's the classic thing that everybody talks about. You're chasing the game, you're chasing the game. Well, they hadn't done a lot of that early on in the season. The Blues have now lost 11 consecutive games when they have allowed the first goal. That comes from Matthew DeFranks of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
0-11-2.
11 consecutive games when they have allowed the first goal. They have not scored a game-tying goal since January 7th in Minnesota. So it's been almost a month now since the last time that the Blues have scored a goal that would tie the game.
Mm-hmm.
That also came in a loss. Opponents have tied the game 5 times since that last opportunity that the Blues had, again, almost a month ago, and twice have erased a 2-goal lead by the St. Louis Blues. When the Blues get down, the game's over. When their opponent gets down, they've got every opportunity to be able to come back within that game. And we saw it against Vegas, where the last portion of that game, they at least scratch out a point to get it to overtime and eventually the shootout. The Blues don't have that resolve right now. And it's strange because that was the one thing that felt different about the Blues for the majority of the beginning portion of the season. And I don't know why that changed. I don't think Jim Montgomery is just some scrub of a coach, but this team went from being a team that I said at the beginning of the year was really fun to watch, and they looked energized. They looked like a better version of the team that we've seen over the last few years, to a team that I don't enjoy watching anymore. It's not fun right now to watch them, and it's not just the losing, but half the time they go out on the ice and look uninspired. They look like a bunch that would rather be anywhere other than wherever that game is being played on any given night, and I can't explain that. I don't get it. Because they've got young players that are fun to watch. Broberg last night, you saw the wheels once again. Mm-hmm. You've seen Holloway look like one of the best players in the league for large chunks of time. I think Jordan Kyrou looks like the best version that we've seen of that player so far in his young career. Like they're getting some good performances. Parayko's having a career year. And yet, they just look blah the vast majority of the time that they're on the ice. I can't explain it.
I mean, for me, I can explain it somewhat. I can't explain why it's gotten to this point, but it's your best players. I mean, Joey said it last night with me on pregame. He said, your alphas need to be what they're expected to be tonight. And credit to them, Thomas, Buchnevich, and Kyrou were the best line on the ice last night. But here's the line for those guys going all the way back to those back-to-back wins against Calgary. Robert Thomas, 0 points, -2 versus Utah. 1 assist versus Vegas. 1 goal versus Vegas and a -1. And then 0 points for 3 straight games to where they were playing 19 minutes with only 3 shots on goal. Why they look uninspired? I don't know how it's gotten to that point, because after those 2 Calgary Flames games, I don't know how much more inspiration you need when you're 1 point out of a playoff spot, when you just made an opponent that you were battling with look like the inferior opponent. But then Utah happened, and maybe it was the benching of Thomas and Buchnevich in the first period, whatever it might be. But the team just completely lost all of their mojo. And to me, it's your best players, because when I look at the teams that are in playoff spots, look at the Minnesota Wild, look at the Dallas Stars, look at the Vegas Golden Knights, look at the LA Kings, heck, look at the Calgary Flames who have put themselves in this position. On a nightly basis, you know what their best players are going to give you, and at least in the last 6 games, you've lost that ability to expect what to get from Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich.
That's what I don't understand, is how this could get so bad so quickly. This is a team that they looked so good in that Winter Classic, and they played so well against the Calgary Flames, and they've had moments even since then where it's looked good. But for the most part, it just doesn't look like a quality hockey team. Since that Columbus Blue Jackets loss that we all pointed to, right, where it was like, what the hell was that? Where did this performance come from for this team? Since that game, they have played 12 games together. Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. They are -9 on the ice for Robert Thomas, -10 on the ice for Pavel Buchnevich. Thomas in those 12 games has 6 points. He has 2 assists in those 12 games. Think about that. Well, Robert Thomas, one of the best distributors in the NHL, has 2 assists in 12 games.
Well, and think of the line combinations that they've done since then. You've put Saad up there, you've put Neighbors up there, you've put Texier up there. You've gone through every single person that you can put up there until last night when you put Jordan Kyrou back up there. And it's not that the third guy's not performing well. That's not where I'm coming from. You have that line has not had the ability to click, and it's not about what the third guy provides. It's what the first 2 do to raise the level of that other player. And I was looking at this last night, BK, because I was just curious when Joey and I were talking about the line combinations. The Blues have had 27 different line combinations, which is 6th most in the National Hockey League this season amongst all teams. And to me, if I looked at the other teams that were above them, they've all dealt with injuries. The Blues had the 4th fewest man games lost on the forward side of things. So that tells me that they have yet to find combinations that work, with the exception of Shen, Holloway, and Jordan Kyrou.
And I would have expected that in the bottom 6. That would have made sense to me this year, given where they're at in the retool. That's typically what you see, is you start at the top and then you work your way down. And we thought going into the season, okay, well, I think they've got 5 of their top 6 figured out. They'll probably take some time to figure out that final spot. But otherwise, you kind of feel pretty good about that. And then eventually Dvorsky gets inserted into the mix. And then way down the road, Jimmy Snuggerud gets inserted. And you kind of see the way that this should fall together. The thing that is so frustrating to me about what this season has become is that I no longer feel that way about the top six any longer. I think I like some of the guys up there, but I don't know what their roles should be when the team is contending again, or if they can contend with those players in their current roles. And that's not supposed to be where they're at right now. We're supposed to be nearing the end of the retool, and instead, I feel like this team is at the exact same position that they were at the beginning of the retool, where you don't know who your top players are on any given night, and that sets you back more than anything else possibly could. We got this from the 636. So, BK, you really don't care that they won last night? Sure don't. Sure don't. It's nice. I would rather them win than lose. That's great. But what am I supposed to say about the team winning some random game against Utah? That means so incredibly little right now. You've got, I think it's 10 games left prior to the NHL's trade deadline. Man, they're 9 points back?
7
points back of a wild card spot?
Thanks to that one against Utah.
And I'm supposed to care about one game? Nah, man.
I think if you walked in that locker room and asked every single player how much that win versus Utah mattered to them, they'd all tell you the same thing. Nothing. Because they know that they're the only team in the NHL that hasn't won 3 in a row. They know that you need to put yourself back. They also know that they missed their opportunity to pounce on the chance to really take over that wild card spot and run with it. And instead, they fell apart. So, yeah, maybe BK is a little too extreme. It was fun to see a victory, but I
would rather them win than lose.
I don't think any of those players feel like that matters, because they know that until they string together 3 or more wins, they're not going to put themselves back in a playoff conversation. In the front office, I felt like Doug Armstrong essentially told you that on Tuesday. Like, we need to start stringing games together to make any noise.
We said before. We said this a few weeks ago now. The teams that do what the Blues are trying to accomplish win 6 in a row and then win 7 out of 10. Like, multiple stretches of really high-level hockey. They played more than 50 games, man. They got 30 games left in the season. We think they're going to win like 20 of the next 30 games because that's what it's going to require.
I smell a run.
If you believe in that, God bless you.
I just want to live longer.
Got beachfront property in Missouri to sell you. Like, that's where we're at with this team right now.
In Mississippi,
I
man.
so badly want them to be in the postseason this year. Just feels like it's not realistic for them. And so instead, we're going to talk about what is realistic, which is what can they sell at the trade deadline. We'll get into that as we go along today. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. You can check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. I come back, and Alex, after being out for, 2 days, 3 days? T-Bone has screwed up all of the cameras in here.
Yeah,
so now we have to switch around all of our spots. T-Bone's on the air. You're on the air. I'm on the air. But if I sat over there, I would not be on the air.
In defense of T-Bone, he hasn't been here also all last week, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wasn't here Tuesday,
I've been
Wednesday,
here,
Thursday.
though, boys.
So he did it.
You're out next week.
You're darn rootin' I am.
Whenever it is.
Four
I don't like
Nations
him
break
being right
is a
here on
hockey
my
break.
left.
No, I know.
I
don't like turning to the right.
It's a different
Weird.
feeling in here. It's a different vibe.
There is another spot.
Yeah,
the one that the
I voted
fast
we
lane
put
uses
you-
is like
Yeah,
timeout.
the
T-Bone, you can go
box.
over there at any point, man. If you don't like me over here, just...
Well,
No, then I got to run the board. Then I got to run the board, and we all know what that looked like on Tuesday. It wasn't very
If you
pretty.
guys want to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPN STL, you can do that. You can also check us out on the Graveyard Chat over there as well. Coming up in 15 minutes, we got to get into some NFL quick hitters, including a big name, maybe the best defensive player in the NFL that has now requested a trade from his team. And there is a new report that just came out a moment ago that this could get ugly between he and the team. We'll tell you who that is, what's coming for him, coming up in 15 minutes. But next, speaking of trades, I can't remember a time that I was this shocked, genuinely, by a trade as I was on Saturday, as one of the best players in the NBA at 25 years old was dealt to one of the league's prominent franchises. We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario and Brandon Kiley for our friends at Circus Sports in Illinois. The big game's coming up this weekend, Alex. You know I'm interested in that, and you know I'm taking the Chiefs. Minus the 1.5 points. I also like the over in this game. Over 49 points. I do think the offenses will have a decent amount of success, and you can find both of those bets on the Circus Sports app in the state of Illinois. Download it today if you haven't done so already, and the reason why is because you're going to win more money when you win with Circa. You put that parlay together. Chiefs minus 1.5, the over in the game. Put $100 down, you win $265. If you made the exact same bet on FanDuel, you would only win $239. You're just winning more when you win with Circa.
Yeah, because they keep as little money as possible on those big bets. They're not limiting you based off of your winnings, and they strive to make sure they are giving you the best splits possible. And you don't trust us, you don't trust them, go check out the other sports books. BK just told you the lines are significantly better over at Circa Sports Illinois. Plus, if you ever have issues, you're dealing with an actual person, not a robot. It's the perfect thing you need for all your sports betting needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
All right, so over the weekend, I got the alert, and I'm sure you guys did the exact same thing. It was late Saturday night. We had just got home from our trip to Florida over the last week, and I get this alert, and it says, Luka Doncic has been traded to the Lakers. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I guess somebody got hacked. That was my initial response. I was like, this can't possibly be real. And then Shams, one of the best this is like if Jeff Passan had tweeted something out about the Cardinals, right? You trust what he has to say because he's built up the credibility over years of work. Well, Shams is that version of ESPN's reporter in the NBA. And he tweets out as a follow-up, this is 1,000% real. Luka Doncic has been traded to the LA Lakers. And for those of you that may not be interested in the NBA, and I know there are plenty in the market, this would be like if, I don't know, what do you think the comparison is in Major League Baseball for what Luka Doncic is? I guess not even Francisco Lindor because he's so young.
Mookie?
I mean, it would be like if Bobby got traded. Bobby Witt got traded.
That's
and the
a pretty
Royals
good
were
one.
the ones that did it, right? It wasn't like he got sold. They were like, you know what? We need to trade him to get that.
Ronald Acuna Jr., because there's some injury stuff there with Luka.
Sure.
He's young. He's shown the ability to be the best player on a team that gets to the finals. That's what Luka Doncic is.
And they trade him for Nolan Arenado.
This guy was more accomplished in the international circuit than any player at his age when he came over to the NBA. And then he comes over to the NBA, and all he's done is consistently be a top 5 to 7 player in the league. Through 6 NBA seasons, Luka ranks 3rd in league history in points per game, 12th in assists per game, and 4th in assist percentage and triple doubles. Legitimately, by the numbers, a top 10 player at his age in the history of the league. And that guy was traded over the weekend for Anthony Davis. There's some other stuff that traded hands, but that's ultimately what this trade was. The Dallas Mavericks said, we don't want to be in the Luka Doncic business anymore. We are calling the Lakers. The player that we want is Anthony Davis. Alex, let's start here, just kind of 10,000-foot view. What was your reaction when you saw this news come out on Saturday night?
That this was fake. Because this trade doesn't happen. And it's not just Luka getting traded. It's Luka getting traded to the LA Lakers. Like, you're getting traded to the one team in the NBA that's willing to throw every single dollar possible to put together a winning team, and they make a trade for this type of player. I was in awe, because a 25-year-old player that carried his team to the NBA Finals, a year ago, 2 years ago? You don't see this type of move take place. And I saw it this morning when they were discussing this on ESPN, and they said, this is now Luka's team. Luka's going to the Lakers, and they're like, cool, we're working around this player. We're throwing every single dollar possible. And this wasn't Luka asking out from
Correct.
Dallas. This was Luka being blindsided by, oh my gosh, you're trading me? LeBron James didn't even know it was freaking happening. So I just couldn't believe something to this ilk went under the radar as long as it did, and then just gets pulled off and everybody is blindsided by it.
Well, the reason why it went under the radar is because nobody else was involved. It was literally the two GMs and the two owners.
Right.
And that's it. There was
But how often does that happen in pro sports?
Never.
Yeah.
Everything gets reported on.
Yeah.
And it's because they kept the circles so tight, because when something about this gets out, well, now everybody involved starts to have their people get involved. The agent for Luka Doncic then starts canvassing the league to see what else is available out there, right? And then he can get word out, hey, my guy's not going to resign here, or here. So then you lose all leverage as a team. If this is truly what the Mavericks wanted, and I'm still confused as to why this would be what the Mavericks wanted.
Defense first, baby.
If we take them at their word that they just didn't think that Luka Doncic was the type of guy that you can win a championship with, even though, again, they were 3 games away from doing so 9 months ago, whatever. If you take them at their word for that, and they just wanted Anthony Davis, they went about this, technically speaking, the correct way. But why would that be what you want, man? I'm trying to see the other side of this. I'm trying to understand, because clearly they think this is a smart basketball move for them. I genuinely can't remember the last time that I saw a trade like this, and I was like, I can't even understand the other side. It doesn't make sense to me. There's no rhyme or reason as to why you would make this deal if you're the Mavericks. If you're the Lakers, of course.
Yeah.
I got a 25-year-old generational superstar who, maybe he comes in a little out of shape every year, but he ends up playing 65 games, which is a hell of a lot better than, Joel Embiid, who plays 50 every year. And in the playoffs, he's a cold-blooded killer who, in the NBA Finals got taken advantage of a little bit defensively, but the dude was playing in the NBA Finals at the age of 24. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an important thing. I don't get it from the Mavericks' perspective.
Who's the star on the Mavericks now?
I guess Kyrie.
Yeah, Kyrie and AD.
Okay, and
assuming Kyrie's still happy.
And you've got, I guarantee they can't be after something like this, but you're not building around those guys. Those are 31. I felt like those guys were brought in to help Luka.
Originally.
And so my question now is, you traded the guy that was the centerpiece, and it's not just him. They had Jalen Brunson, too, who is also a star in the NBA. So you've moved on from your 2 stars, and you brought in Klay Thompson and Kyrie Irving and now Anthony Davis to be centerpieces for the team, because those guys aren't centerpieces for teams anymore.
It's a win-now move is what it is, which is wild to say, because I'm with you, and I'm with you. I don't understand what they're doing.
It's a different type of win now. When their GM basically comes out and says, we'll see if this was the right move soon, that's not a good mindset to have.
But it is, I kind of respect it in a weird way.
Do you?
I do.
I do not.
And let me explain why. I think far too often GMs are scared. They're just bleeping terrified.
Because of this move.
No, I think they got this wrong. Dead ass wrong. I think that we are going to look back at this and everybody's going to be fired for making one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA. And I don't mean that to sound like shock jockey. I legitimately think that's going to be what this goes down as. But a small part of me, it's very small, minuscule, does kind of respect this, because at least they're willing to make the scary move. And at least they're willing to do the thing that they're like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work, because how could you? But I think we become a better team today because we're willing to go out there and make the risky moves. They made a risky move to go acquire Kyrie Irving, and it has worked. Kyrie and Luka were a great duo together. They made a risky move to trade Porzingis a few years ago, and it did work out for them. Their moves with this front office in place have mostly been smart, and many of them have been very risky and have been the types of things that you'd say, I don't know about this one. Now, this is different. This is trading a 25-year-old generational superstar. But I kind of respect it in a weird way that they're at least willing to make the move that you're like, hey, at least you're not scared by something else that went wrong in the past. Like, it's the thing that I've criticized the Cardinals about is they act scared with some of the moves that they're unwilling to make. And say what you will about this, and we've said plenty, and I think all of it's fair. They ain't scared.
So I agree with your statement, but like to a degree. Like, I think what you just explained is what the Colorado Avalanche pulled off a couple of weeks ago. Like, that's a scary move to trade a legit top 5 player in the National Hockey League with back-to-back 50-goal seasons who's 28 years old. But you traded him for a guy that you believe can help you still win in Martin Necas, who's 25 years old. He's still a really good player. He's not Mikko Rantanen, but he's still young. Yeah, he's young. He's a guy that's like, hey, he fits into our core. You're not you're doing this with Anthony Davis to say, boy, we hope we get it this year because I don't know what your injuries are going to look like. You're 32 years old, and we've got 2 other 30-year-olds that also haven't been the pieces that you go on to win championships with. So I agree. I wish more GMs would make bold moves like this, but this is just like this isn't even a lateral move. This isn't even a linear move. It's a lateral move. Like, you're trading away a guy who's supposed to be a core piece for a championship for a guy who was a complementary piece for a championship.
I'm with you, and I think this is going to be, again, viewed as one of the worst trades in the history of the NBA when all is said and done. And honestly, in all of professional sports.
I hope they meet the playoffs.
That will be, huh?
I hope they meet the playoffs.
I do, too.
The Lakers and the Mavs,
now
that'd be amazing.
you'll get your answers right away on what he's saying.
Are you going to change the name of your son now because of this?
My son's name is Luka, Luca.
Oh, okay.
To be very clear here.
I thought you were just a big
Not
Luka
named after
Doncic
Luka
fan.
Doncic.
He's with his best friend, LeBron James. He loves LeBron.
Oh, you're right. Change it to LeBron.
I do think this is going to be fascinating to watch moving forward because I think we've understated a bit how good Anthony Davis is. Anthony Davis is a really good basketball player. Luka's just different. Luka is the type of guy that 5 years from now, we could be talking about as the best player in the NBA. Full stop. Like, he's better than everybody else in the league. That is in his range of outcomes. AD is not, has not, and will never be that player. So it's on different tiers. Do you guys have anything in your own sports fandoms that were like this kind of shocking? When you woke up in the morning and you were like, oh my God, the Cardinals did what? The Blues did what? The Pacers did what? Is there something that comes to what is the most shocking trade that you can remember from your fandom?
Mine would be the Stafford trade. Like, I kept saying, like, hey, I think the Rams could be interested in I think it was Stafford and Rodgers at the time. But I was just kind of saying that because I knew the Rams are typically aggressive. Sure. I didn't have, I really believed it. And then when it actually happened, I was stunned because they moved on from Goff, who they just gave a huge contract to. They gave away a couple first-round picks. And it was 2, legitimately really good quarterbacks that were on the move. That's probably the one for me that I would refer back to. Outside of that, I don't know if there's anything that's
for me, it's the Tyreek trade. The Chiefs trading Tyreek, I could not believe it. You guys saw me whenever it happened. I at first, I thought that was also not real. For a lot of Rams fans here locally, I would imagine the Marshall Faulk trade was one of those where it's like, wait, the Rams have Marshall Faulk now? Like, what? Yeah. But I can't. I don't think there is necessarily one of those for the Cardinals in recent years. I guess it would maybe be Jason Hayward, be the closest thing to just like a truly shocking trade that took place. But again, that was in response to a tragedy. So
and it's also not acquiring the same ilk of a player as Luka Doncic.
No, of course, yeah.
I don't think any, the one that I could come up with, but I don't remember living it. I lived it for my father when I was 6 years old when Gretzky was traded to the Blues. But again, I was 6, so I don't remember the levity of it. Now you look back on it and you're like, oh, damn, they really did that? Like, my father, who was just starstruck at the time, that's probably the closest thing we saw to bring it in. But even at the time, I don't think Gretzky was 25 years old. I think he was in his early 30s, late 20s. So you don't see this trade happen very often.
Yeah, it never. I think this is genuinely going to go down as one of the... I think it is the biggest NBA trade of my life.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything that would be on the same level as this. And if I'm just... I tried to go back earlier today and think of, hey, what are the other biggest trades that we've seen? The sheer shock of it all with this is what really leads to there was nothing here.
I do
There
hope
was nothing.
I do hope Pro Sports is like, let's start doing more of these, because damn, these last 3 weeks have been exciting in terms of the NHL trades, and then this one, like, let's go trade for Shohei Ohtani.
It's one thing if a player asks out and then you're surprised that the team went along with it. It's another thing entirely when neither of these two individuals involved had asked to be moved. And they're both, like, Anthony Davis might be top 3 center, conservatively speaking, in the NBA right now. I guess now he's going to play the 4, but big man, top 3 to 5 in the NBA. And Luka is a top 3 to 5 player in the NBA. And they were just dealt with no real heads up to either player, It's crazy. It's absolutely shocking. He's T-Bone. That's Alex on BK. It is throwing me off here the way that we're constructed inside of this room. It's a very different type of thing, but we're making it through. You can check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. In 15 minutes, we'll get into questions and answers. But coming up next, there is more movement potentially coming in the NFL with one of the top defenders in the league asking for a trade. We'll tell you who that is next here on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings as Super Bowl 59 is here. Chiefs and Eagles in action, and it's the last time to play NFL Pick 6 this season. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6, and it's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. I'm looking at Travis Kelce, more than 61.5 receiving yards, A.J. Brown, more than 70.5 receiving yards, and Jalen Hurts, more than 211.5 passing yards. 10 on that can win you 40 plus. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5 to get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5 and get $59 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void or prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awards. Non-drawable Pick 6 credits expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues beat the Utah Hockey Club last night 2-1. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Edmonton Oilers. We've got pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. The news of the day is that one of the best players in the NFL has requested a trade. According to Diana Rossini of The Athletic, Myles Garrett has requested a trade, and here's what he had to say in his statement that he released to the media today, boys. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal still fuels me to this day more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio is in the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. The past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. Signed, Myles Garrett.
Oh, that's nice.
I love that we send press releases out when we want to be traded.
So, Myles Garrett signed a 5-year, $125 million deal with the Cleveland Browns. This was a couple of years ago. His cap hit this year, if he were to be traded, would be about $35 million. He's got 2 years remaining on his contract and then a boatload of void years. Man, did the Browns really screw themselves with that Deshaun Watson contract, and it continues to show every single day. I think they're going to trade him. I know their GM came out and said that they wouldn't, but this public demand of a trade and then just the harsh reality of them not being good enough to legitimately compete, and he's clearly not going to resign with them. If he's asking for a trade right now, you're not going to get to the end of next season, then boom, yeah, let's do this. Sign up for 5 more years, baby. He's probably going to be traded this offseason. Where do you guys want to see him go? If he ends up getting dealt, what do you think is the best possible landing spot as a neutral observer? Because I've got one in mind for me that I think would be the most likely potentially and the best.
So, like, most likely and the one that I want to see him get traded to are two different conversations, but I'll go off the one that's more likely to happen and would be the best fit. It's the Washington Commanders.
That is mine.
It's either Washington or New England, because I think either of those two, they can go out there, make the move, and still put together at least a competitive roster. Now, you're doing the Patriots one kind of longer term, so I don't know if Myles Garrett wants to go there, but I don't think he's got a choice. The Commanders is probably the best one.
I think that one makes sense because the NFC is so wide open. He can convince himself, hey, they were in the NFC Championship game this year. I will finally have a quarterback for the first time in my entire NFL career. And they've got a good coach in Dan Quinn that has had success with defensive ends like Myles Garrett that are absolute game records. Look back no further than what Quinn was able to do in Dallas when Micah Parsons put up legit defensive player of the year types of numbers. Yeah. So personally, it's great for him. And as a team, you know that they are ready to compete, and you don't have to go through Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson every single season just to get to the Super Bowl the way that you would if you were with the Patriots. I think it will likely take place with a team in the NFC if this thing happens.
The question is, if the Commanders make that move, do they still have enough money? And they got $96 million.
Yeah, they got plenty.
Can they still upgrade their offense? Because that's going to be, should be priority number one for them. You also have to fix your defense.
No doubt.
The Bengals would be an interesting one, too.
They don't have the money.
Yeah.
They've got to figure out T. Higgins. They've got to figure out Jamar Chase. Like, they've got so many. They've got their own defensive end and Trey Hendrickson that they're probably going to have to move this offseason. So I don't think that would be possible, honestly, for them.
Yeah, one I looked at, but they don't have any money either, is Buffalo. Like, Buffalo would make a ton of sense because now you're kind of in that reset, but they still, I think they're like $11 million over the cap right now, so they'd have to do a lot of wiggling. So they're out. I do love the Commanders one. I think if I'm going to look somewhere else, just from the outside of that, I wonder, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I wonder if Carolina would make sense for him. because you got Bryce Young now starting to take the step in the proper direction. You're in a weak NFC South division. You moved on from Brian Burns and got multiple picks for him. They are suddenly become an interesting team.
They're not good, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I'm going to another NFC South team.
I'm not going to a similar, it's like the Arenado thing, right? Where if I'm going to a similar situation, I don't want to get moved there. Yeah. I want to go to a clear and obvious contender. And I'm sure there will be some that say, but BK, he doesn't have a no-trade clause. How's he going to enforce this? Just says, I don't want to resign.
Yeah.
If he goes somewhere else, you have him for the next 2 years, but that will potentially impact what the Browns are able to get in return, which means if they're trying to get the best possible return, they will trade him to a team that can re-sign him. So if I'm him, I have no interest in going to Carolina whatsoever.
If there's an NFC South team, I'd be more likely to want to go to the Falcons than I would the Panthers.
I don't think they can do that now.
Probably
because of
not.
the Kirk Cousins money that they just gave out last year. You kind of have to go to a team that has either a rookie contract or a guy that is on the beginning stages of his big extension that he signed.
The Bears would be fun.
I thought about the Bears. And then you have a kind of two-headed monster and Sweat and him.
You still have to fix your offensive line, but you got your quarterback on the rookie deal. You've got weapons to be a competitive team. Now your defense is elite. You fix your offensive line a little bit, and you're a competitive team with Ben Johnson.
Yeah, they make some sense. I could see... I don't know how they would make this work money-wise, but they seem to find ways to do things that surprise me every year. The Eagles are a team that are always hyper-aggressive in these kinds of markets. If there's a true star available, Howie Roseman is going to be calling, and that's a team that you don't even have to squint with to see if they could potentially be a contender. They're obviously a contender as they're in the Super Bowl this week. So Eagles, Commanders, Bears, I think to a lesser degree. Your Rams, I don't think have the money to be able to make a move like this. It's a limited crop of teams.
They don't have any first-round picks.
Maybe the Packers.
I was just about to say them because I was kind of looking through their cap space. They've got money to spend.
They still need to upgrade other areas.
Yeah, I know. They've got $42 million in cap space, but Garrett coming off the edge in a really good division. Like, I could see how they convince themselves. You got the quarterback situation figured out, head coach situation figured out.
If you're the Packers, would you rather him or go after T. Higgins?
I would. That's the thing. I would probably go after Higgins
because
I think they need a wide receiver more than they need.
I would go after Higgins, but there's going to be a huge market for Higgins. Like you mentioned, the Patriots. I think that's what the Patriots are probably going to do is go out and get a legit number one guy for Drake May. So if I'm the Packers, maybe I decide, okay, we're going to go to the draft for one of those guys to help us out on offense. You don't find guys like Myles Garrett in the draft. They don't exist. So especially where the Packers are selecting, let's go trade a first-round pick for him. It's a late first round anyways. Go ahead and give him the $30 million a year that he's looking for. And now we've got this game wrecker on the defensive side of the ball, and we'll just count on Jordan Love to elevate those around him the way that he has the last couple of seasons. So I could maybe see that making some sense as well.
What about Detroit? I don't
know that they can do the money.
They got $46 million in cap space.
But for this year.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem.
Think about beyond.
Once you get past that. But it's a one-and-done kind of thing, right? Or not one and done, but... that would be the all-in push, right? Go all in. And then if you needed to, you could trade Garrett in the next offseason.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the kind of thing that they would do. Because I think they're going to try to keep re-signing some of these guys internally. Like last year they got Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they got one other, Penei Sewell done. Over the next few years, those drafts that they had that were really good, that they got a bunch of really good players, those guys are coming up on contracts now.
Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta.
Exactly.
You're going to have to figure out your quarterback situation soon.
So you're going to have to start paying those players legit top of the market money. Like you're going to have to pay $18 million a year to keep Jahmyr Gibbs. Right now he's $4.
And you might be paying a lot to Aiden Hutchinson too, who basically is going to be your Myles Garrett
here in a couple of seasons. So I just don't know that they can make that happen unless they do what you're talking about, T-Bone, where it's we're going to have him for a year and then we're going to have to trade him next year.
I was going to say, or you look at it and you say,
scenario where it makes sense.
Because his contract is up in 2 years, 2027. You look at this and you say, we got 2 years to go win a Super Bowl with him, and then we walk away from it. So I guess if you're the Lions, and I don't know when those contracts are going to be coming up.
That's why it kind of makes sense for me for them.
Yeah.
To an extent, because they are in push now mode. They are in the spot that we're talking about where you kind of just leverage everything and say, hey, we got to go get ours now, or we're just not going to get it.
It's a bold move to do that right when you lost both of your coordinators, too. And they're in a really interesting spot as an organization.
You know, I know that we said that Buffalo doesn't have any cap space, but I thought we talked about this a couple weeks ago, trying to get out of the Von Miller deal. Are there other contracts they can get out of? Because if you're Buffalo, this is the move that you say, look, we can't keep losing to Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. Let's go get a guy who's going to make life hell for them.
They just have such a
you're not getting out of it?
Yeah, I mean... they can potentially, I think Josh Allen's contract is one that they kind of move some money around. But again, this is a situation where you can't have Josh Allen at a $40 million cap hit and Myles Garrett at $40 million as a cap hit. Now you've got $80 million tied up into two players. Just becomes extremely difficult to be able to maneuver underneath the cap. The cap is fake until it's not. And for the Bills, it is no longer fake. When you've got a quarterback on a rookie deal, you can pretty much do what you want. The Bills aren't there anymore, unfortunately. All right. With Tanner Hendrickson and Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up next, we're going to get into questions and answers at 12 o'clock. Yes, we have heard from all of you. We will react to the Jim Edmonds comments from earlier today. There were a lot of them. We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. Questions and answers is next. Hey, it's BK, and it is time to unlock your inner champion. The place to do so is with Victory Men's Health. Check them out today. They've got 4 great locations across the St. Louis area, and you can see them online at victorymenshealth.com. They will help you unlock your inner champion, and that means different things for different people. For some, that means helping you lose some of that weight that you maybe gained over the holiday season. You tried doing it on your own, maybe set yourself a New Year's resolution. Well, now we're into February, and if it isn't going the way that you had hoped, maybe Victory Men's Health can help you out with that. If you are a man that has some low testosterone symptoms, that may mean a little bit of grogginess, not getting the same amount of results out of your workouts. They can check for that over at victorymenshealth.com, and you can learn about erectile dysfunction. If you are somebody that deals with that, they can potentially help you out. Again, it's Victory Men's Health. You can check them out today. They've got 4 great locations. You can book your first appointment today by going to victorymenshealth.com. That's Victory Men's Health, 4 great locations, and at victorymenshealth.com. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line, and we will answer them here on BK and Ferrario. From the 980, guys, for questions and answers, has St. Louis become Cleveland of sports? And why should St. Louis sports fans be excited about any of our major teams right now? I don't think they've become Cleveland because Cleveland has 50 years of this. The only time that they've been a real winner was a few years for baseball.
Don't they have one of the best basketball teams right now in the league?
They do, but really the one time that their basketball team has had any sustained success is when the guy that was born in Cleveland decided to stay in Cleveland for an extended period of time. So you're not that, but you're certainly not on the level with like Boston. I mean, you're in the middle, just like these teams are right now. You're kind of, I'd say, the 20th best sports city in America in terms of overall success, not fan support by any stretch, but in terms of the team success, probably like 20th.
Yeah, you're not. Cleveland just is bad every year. You know what to expect. At least you've got excitement for the future in both the Cardinals and the Blues. I think the problem is,
do you? Like, that would be my question.
I mean, on paper you do. The question is, are they going to live up to the excitement?
I don't look at the Blues and go, they're exciting in the future. They got some nice pieces that are coming.
I'm excited for Dvorsky and Snuggerud, and I think a lot of people should be.
If we're questioning their core,
I think both teams are in a very similar spot. I think that there can be. If you're in Alex's position and you want to view it from the glass half full, the glass is at the middle for both teams. And it depends on what your perspective is.
We're doing the same with the Cardinals.
Both my glasses are empty.
We're doing with the Cardinals, too, though. We're excited about Quinn Matthews. We're excited about J.J. Weatherholt.
I think both teams, and I agree with BK, I think they're both in the same spot, and I think they're both in really bad spots. Like, I see the Blues as the core's a problem, and they've got some nice pieces coming, but I don't think they're superstars by any means, so the Blues are stuck. And I look at the Cardinals, and we're going to find out really this year where they really are. Like, if Walker's not Walker that we expected, or Gorman can't get back to being a guy that they built around, they're in a rebuild. Welcome to a rebuild. There is no next wave for the Cardinals offensively. So it either comes in-house this year, or you're looking at the Cardinals going, man, we're 3, 4, 5 years away from whenever they're their next version. Same with the Blues. I mean, they're in year, 3 of the retool? They haven't gone anywhere, as we just talked about in the opening segment. So, yeah, St. Louis sports, I got nothing for you. I'm sorry to kind of brighten your day.
Somebody on the text line from the 314 said, guys, where's the excitement for the Cardinals? Genuinely asking, what are you excited about? I think there are reasons to be excited for the Cardinals, similar to what Alex was saying. Hey, if you're excited about Dvorsky, if you're excited about Snuggerud, what you've seen from Broberg and Holloway and Kyrou taking this next step, there's reasons to be excited about all of those things and so much more. I think the same thing is true for the Cardinals. If you want to believe, you can talk yourself into Brendan Donovan being the leader of the team. You can talk yourself into Walker and Gorman taking another step. You can talk yourself into the fact, as I will, Ivan Herrera could be one of the best hitting catchers in all of Major League Baseball starting this season. J.J. Weatherholt is on the way. Quinn Matthews is a very exciting arm. I think Cooper Jerpy probably doesn't get talked enough about because of the injuries that have plagued him down in the minor leagues. Tim Kent still has upside. He's been in the league, in the system for 5 years, but he's also still 22 years old. So there are reasons to be excited, but I mean, it's also all future aspirations as opposed to what I can tell you about for the 2025 season, of which there's not a ton to be excited about.
The issue that we have with St. Louis as fans right now is you can't get excited about the future if your core is a problem. And I think that's what T-Bone's getting at. Like, the core is the problem on both sides. Yeah. And there's questions on both of them, and until you get those questions answered or until they make changes, you can only get excited about the future so much.
I agree that there are a lot of players that can be exciting to dream on here in St. Louis. I don't know where the dream is on how they're getting back to winning as these organizations. And that is what is most important, and that's what made St. Louis sports fans fall in love, right? The Blues going through the Cup run and that playoff window they went on for almost a decade. The Cardinals being a great organization, the pinnacle of what an organization should be for almost a 2-decade stretch. And now they're both stuck in the muddy middle.
Well, we got to talk about that. The organization that everybody aspired to be is now being called out by one of its former players who eventually, I believe, should be a Hall of Famer. Jim Edmonds was on with TMA earlier today. We're going to play some of the best clips from that. You're going to want to hear this. It's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
it's not fun anymore. The baseball is, they don't make you feel like you're wanted. Be around the stadium. I love Ollie, the DeWitts. I have so much respect for Mo. Everybody's great, but somehow indoors in the inner circle, it's just not the same. It's not the same organization. It's not fun to be around. They make it pretty obvious, even the security guards, like, hey, it might not be a good time. I'm like, fine with me. I don't need to be in there. If you don't want me to tell your pitchers that they're tipping their pitch, I'm going to take my talents out here to Tennessee and learn how to be a gardener and a farmer.
That's what it sounded like earlier today on TMA. Jim Edmonds joins the guys. I would highly recommend. It's like a 25-minute interview, and it's worth your time going and checking that out individually. Like, listen to the entire thing, because there's context into that interview that we, frankly, just cannot give you on our show because there's not enough time other than if we literally played the entire thing for you. But check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Jim Edmonds was great earlier today on with TMA. Talked about why he's not returning to the broadcast this year, said it was a mutual decision. He didn't want to return to the broadcast, and then FanDuel Sports called him and said, hey, you're not wanted back on the broadcast either. So both parties effectively came to the same conclusion, which is no more Jim Edmonds on Cardinals games. He then talked a lot about how he's just not going to be around the team anymore. He doesn't want to be here. He was asked directly, are you planning to be at opening day? And he said, as of right now, I'm not sure. And he was asked about what the last few years have been like, and he was candid about the direction of the team, the vibe around the team, and what he views as some problems that have emerged within the Cardinals organization. So I wanted to play a couple of these quotes for you, Alex. We'll react to this next one first on why Cardinals Hall of Famers don't seem to be around the team as often as they once were.
Other than really Izzy being a coach and Ludwig, they just don't invite us down there anymore. It's a total different atmosphere, and it kind of makes you feel like you're not appreciated, not wanted, don't need your help. And like I said, I have the utmost respect for the people, but something's different as a whole. And I know the players feel it, the alumni feels it, and it's just different. It's just not as much fun.
So is it a case the organization doesn't want you guys around, or do you guys not want to be around the organization, Jim?
No, I don't know what it is. It's just after COVID, it's just like went dead silent, crickets. It's like you get an email saying, hey, opening day's around the corner. Don't forget to put your day on the calendar, and, we'll give you an email. And other than that, it's like, see you at the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Okay. I'm so glad he referenced COVID. Because, Alex, we've talked about this. Basically, it feels to me, and it feels to a lot of people, I think, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, as though 2018 is kind of the line of demarcation, right? That season, they had some success, and then, since then, things have gone awry. I think it's actually COVID where that took place, because that is when they eliminated a lot of these former players from their roles within the minor league. That is when they, in general, just downsized on their Cardinals minor league support staff. What are they doing right now? Basically just implementing jobs that they already had filled that had been eliminated in 2020 because of COVID, or at least that was the excuse to eliminate them. And then they never got back to full capacity on that side of things. The team in 2020, I felt like was kind of piecemealed together. And it seems like every year since then, they've basically just done some version of the same thing where it's like, hey, we're going to go right up to that line and not actually cross it because why? It's been half measures in seemingly every aspect of the organization ever since COVID happened. That feels to me like a break point for this organization. But Alex, as you were listening to this interview with Jim Edmonds earlier today, and he said some things that we've heard, bandied about privately, publicly, whatever. What was your top reaction to that?
Surprised, and honestly a little frustrated that it's gotten to this point. I mean, Jim Edmonds, you and I agree on this, BK, should be a Hall of Famer. And when you talk about the Cardinals' history, that's what we always reference back to, you think of all of the Hall of Famers and the former Cardinals that are always around the team. And to hear a guy who, we've heard him on the broadcasts an awful lot over these last few years, talking about the hitting structure and what he's seeing from the broadcast booth and working with some guys and talking with some guys. Why wouldn't you want that guy around your players? Why wouldn't you want the history of what the Cardinals were around the group of players that are supposed to be taking over for the Cardinals moving forward. And it's not just what Jim Edmonds is saying. I mean, we've talked a lot about it with Chris Carpenter. Like, Chris Carpenter was the one that never really seemed like he was invited to be around the team. Jim Edmonds referenced Mark McGwire, which we're going to get to that cut in just a couple of moments. There's just kind of a track record of the former Cardinals players, the former Cardinals Hall of Famers, that just aren't tied in with the team. Now, I don't know what goes into it. Is there money that is supposed to be paid to these guys when they go to spring training? So then there's the COVID cutoff for you. They're slashing prices. They're not spending extra money. But if I'm going to be honest with this Cardinals team, for where you're at right now, where you've been these last couple of years, if I'm putting money towards something, it's making sure I've got the right guys around my players that help move this organization into the same direction that they were for the last 20 years. Why would you change something that you've done for the last however many years this direction?
So somebody on the text line brings this up from the 636. Guys, to me, this is just weird. Part of the Cardinals thing is their history. That's my confusion with all of this. The selling point of the Cardinals is the history. I'll have to look this up, but they put out their theme nights for this upcoming season. And just full disclosure, I haven't gone through all of them yet, but they released this last week, and they put out what exactly they're going to be doing for the upcoming season. My guess is a lot of those are something about the history of the team, because that's what the Cardinals sell right now. Think about all of the reunions that they've had in recent seasons. And, hey, it's the 10-year anniversary of the 2011 team. Oh, it's the 20-year anniversary of the 2004 team, right?
This year it's the 85 team.
There you go. They always like to bring back these guys because they're celebrating the history of the team, as they should. When you are, historically speaking, one of the most prominent and important landmark franchises in your sport, if you are the Boston Celtics or the LA Lakers or the St. Louis Cardinals, the New York Yankees, there are certain brands that matter more than others because of the historical nature of those teams. I rooted for the Kansas City Royals growing up. That is not what they had to sell.
Oh, you guys didn't get that a lot?
You can sell 85 and 2015 and not much in between. They sucked for 30 years. They were horrible. One of the worst teams in all of Major League Baseball. All of my favorite players growing up were shopped elsewhere. I liked Carlos Beltran. Well, he's not remembered as a Royal. I liked Jermaine Dye. He went on to have success elsewhere. I liked Johnny Damon. Again, went on to have success elsewhere. These were my favorite players, and none of them stayed with my favorite team, because why would you? The Cardinals are supposed to be different. The Cardinals are viewed as like one of these historically prominent franchises, and then they bring those guys back and they pass it down. What they once were is what they continue to be. And so, like, whether or not you think that's why the team continues to have success, and I don't know. John Mozeliak himself told us on this radio show that is the secret sauce of the St. Louis Cardinals. Not my words, his. And so when he says those things and he talks about the Hall of Famers coming back and talking to the young players and seeing Lou Brock come back and talk to them about base stealing, or seeing Bob Gibson talk about the mentality of what it takes to be a starting pitcher, and he passes that down to Chris Carpenter, who passes it down to Adam Wainwright, who passes it down to Jack Flaherty and beyond, well, this stuff matters. And the organization sells it as it mattering. And so when they talk about, like, people on the outside looking in, the organization has lost its way, or when Mike Schilt talks about that, and now you've seen that, this is what they're talking about. So whether you love Jim Edmonds or you hate Jim Edmonds, and there are plenty of people on both sides of that argument, and that's fine. Forget the messenger, listen to the message here. It's clear the Cardinals have lost their way, and they are finally admitting as much.
I just pulled up this article as you were talking about that, BK, because I was curious. This was the article when Nolan Arenado was talking about being traded to the Cardinals. This was the quote that he put in there, talking about, look, I'm going to miss the people in Colorado, but I've embraced the Cardinal way. The sweet moment was coming here to a great organization that has a great history, where I'm surrounded by plenty of Hall of Famers. The conversations we've had, it's an organization, the players that I've been around, I've admired for a long time. It's just a different vibe. The meetings, the attention to detail, they talk about so many things that I've never heard before as a team.
And I think some of that stuff still happens, to, like, be totally clear. I know people give this coaching staff a lot of crap, and that's fine. Again, we can disagree on some of these individual points. I think some of that stuff continues to be there. But some of it isn't. Other than Nolan Arenado, Who are the Hall of Famers on this team?
He's the only one.
Yeah, he's the only one.
If he's traded, it is very possible, maybe even likely, that they will enter the season without a Hall of Famer in uniform for the first time in 70 years.
So if you don't have any Hall of Famers in uniform and you don't have any Hall of Famers around the team, how are you supposed to continue the Cardinal way that has put the Cardinals on the map since the 60s?
Exactly. It becomes a different organization. And I think maybe they want that in some regards. They would like to break with some of the history of the team. We can't break with all of it.
But my question would be, why would you want to break from the history of the team? Why would you want to get away from something that has made you one of the most successful organizations?
Because I think you can make an argument, and again, this is me playing the other side. I do generally agree with what you're saying. Like, I think it is good to have those guys, like Chris Carpenter. Why is he not around the Cardinals' young pitchers? Like, it's crazy to me. Just pay him, whatever, $100,000 a year to just talk to the young guys. Like, just do that. That's just a smart thing to do as an organization. But whatever. If I was going to take the other side of this, Alex, the devil's advocate perspective, it would be that they would probably tell you, hey, the reason why we were really good in the early 2000s is because we had Hall of Famers on the team. Not because we had Hall of Famers coming back to be a part of the team, but because we had Hall of Famers on the team. And right now we don't, so we got to get back to having those Hall of Famers in uniform. To put on my hat that I agree with you on, part of the reason why you don't have Hall of Famers in uniform right now is because you chose not to. You can go out there and acquire those players still, and you are choosing actively not to, or to develop those Hall of Fame players. And you got rid of the guys that can help you develop them. So, anyways, I did find one other thing. You mentioned Nolan Arenado, Alex. I wanted to play this cut from Jim Edmonds from earlier today as well. Because he said something about a third baseman from California.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Nolan Gorman?
It's from Arizona.
Jordan Walker?
I don't know.
That
He's from Atlanta.
wanted a former Cardinal to come back and be a part of the team at spring training. Take a listen.
There's a guy I won't name, but he plays third base. Asked if Mark McGwire could come to spring training, and they said, no, we have everything we need. I really don't understand some of that.
It sounds like that would be Nolan Arenado was interested.
Yeah, I can't say his name, but he plays third base, and he was born in Newport Beach.
He wanted Mark McGwire to come to spring training, and what was the response?
I heard that he asked, and they kind of just said, we don't need him. We have everything that we need. Thank you.
Now, apparently this had happened a couple of years ago. This was not like a recent ask, not
Probably
for this year, not for last. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, mine was when he was acquired.
I know, right after that.
Oh, God, that's awkward.
He was told no. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, yeah. Well, and you know what it sounded like at the end, the comment he made? The Cardinals have gotten way too confident in their own ways. The Cardinals have that massive ego that's like, nah, we're the Cardinals. We don't need Mark McGwire here. We've got all that we need. When in reality, you have been denying for however many years that you've got all that you need while Major League Baseball trends in the other direction. You know the one thing that you had while all of the other teams went out there and upgraded technology? We've got the Hall of Famers. We've got the Cardinal way. We've got the George Kissel disciples showing up to spring training that are working with these guys. Jose Oquendo, all of these people. But now you've gotten to the point, no, we're good. We don't need those guys.
All right, I do want to hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. The Scott Lee heating mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app as well. What was your reaction to the Jim Edmonds comments? Because we just gave you ours. Again, that's a few clips from what was about a 25-minute conversation, and I would recommend going and listening to the entire thing. But if you did hear all of that, if you heard just those clips, then that is kind of the big stuff that you care about as a Cardinals fan. What was your reaction to it? We'll give you some more of ours, hear more from you guys as well coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
ever since Tony left the team and Mozeliak came on board with his boring philosophy, the team and the whole organization has gone from fun baseball to boring business. The team now reflects the personality of the old GM called Mo, and it's boring and dull, just like him.
That was Janet, who, of course, put in her mic drop on the 101 ESPN app. If you'd like to get your thoughts on this as well, Scott Lee Heating mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. You can check that out today. Download the app and then get your thoughts in for the Jim Edmonds comments from earlier today. Alex, these comments are getting a lot of play, as they should, in my opinion.
What?
Now, it's worth noting the messenger, in my opinion. Jim has certainly had his fair share of controversies, whether it's statements that he's made or just being in the headlines, right? And so you have to take that into account, I suppose, whenever you're talking about something like this. I care more to focus on the message because, to me, that's what's interesting about this as somebody that covers and observes the Cardinals on a day-to-day basis. And what he's saying about the Cardinals, whether it's like the team itself or the way that they treat their Hall of Famers or the really just in general, the relationship between the former players and the team, that to me is what is interesting from the conversation with Jim Edmonds earlier today. Because it used to be what the team promoted. And now it is something that in a lot of ways the team's kind of backing away from and has really for almost the last 5 years or so. So we want to hear from you guys. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. And again, the mic drop features on the 101 ESPN app. Alex, big picture wise, how much do you think this stuff matters? What he's saying, the lack of relationship now with some of these Hall of Famers, like, how much does that really matter in the grand scheme of things to you?
To me, little. I like if this was a slice of pie, I'd give it like 30%. Because, yes, it's concerning that these Hall of Famers aren't around as much and working with these younger players. But like you just mentioned on the last segment, BK, you want to know also why the team was so good for the longest time? Because Albert freaking Pujols and Yadier Molina were a part of this roster. And Jim Edmonds and Scott Rowland. Like, they were so good in the Jim Edmonds era because their general manager was going out and wheeling and dealing nonstop. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, because Chris Carpenter's around, that's why this team's never developed an ace. Is it a part of it, the problem? Probably. But I also think the Cardinals just have a problem with identifying dudes. And then on top of it, they have a problem with being unwilling to be aggressive in the areas that they should be. So, yes, I would love to see more of these Hall of Famers around. And if this is the problem to where you've got hitters on this team that want certain former Cardinals Hall of Famers to come help, and they say, no, we don't need it. Yeah, that's problematic if you want this team to move in the right direction. But I also have to look at, well, why has Jordan Walker been struggling? Why has Nolan Gorman been struggling? Why are some of these other teams making aggressive trades and signings over the last few years, and you've kind of sat on your hands? That's not because of the Hall of Famers not being around. It's because you're unwilling to be aggressive. So, like, I'd say 70% of this is more about the players in the on-field problem than it's worrying about the Hall of Famers being around.
Somebody, I think it was Randy Carricker mentioned this previously, where he had talked about, hey, you know, look at the Dodgers. They have 20 guys that can hit or can help hitters within their organization, right? And every one of them goes about it a little bit differently. One of them's a former Hall of Famer. Another guy's a true, like, numbers nerd in every possible respect. And another guy is somewhere in between. He was a player that understands the numbers and whatever. The entire spectrum is covered by the Dodgers staff in order to help their young players as much as humanly possible, or old players, whatever. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of these guys are going to get their own help somewhere. And so they'll go down to Driveline, or they'll go to one of these, like, third-party places that will allegedly, potentially, help you with your swing, maximize what your results are. Well, the Dodgers have decided we don't want you going to those people because they don't have our team as their top priority. We want you to go to our people in-house. And so they just hired a bunch of people to be able to help them in that regard. And so they can go to their players and say, what do you want? Okay, we've got that. Here, go talk to this guy. And that is something that the Cardinals lack, and one of those things is a guy like Big Mac.
Yeah.
if he's available to talk to your players, and one of your players, or 5 of them, or 20 of them, however many, are able to get some positive returns from his coaching, that's a good thing for you. And if Chris Carpenter's available and one of your young players picks up one thing from him, that's a positive for you. So I understand it can be a situation where, like, eventually you do have to make some cuts. There's only so much money to go around. There's only so much investment that you're willing to make in your organization. But this used to be the thing that they invested in. So it used to be, we go out and make the moves that help our major league product. We have all these roving instructors that help our minor league product. And we have these great relationships with our Hall of Famers. Like, all of this stuff all kind of tied together. And they were all symptoms of a greater overall belief system as an organization, which is, we are going to do everything possible to make sure we have the best team on the field every single time that we take the field. And that, to me, that top line thing is what's changed. Mm-hmm. Because then you were going out and making the moves that were necessary. And now you're not. And then you had all the former Hall of Famers around the organization. And now you don't. And so it's just, these are all symptoms of a greater problem to me.
It's also, we talk so much about having the Hall of Famers. It's also the person that's receiving the message, too.
100%.
Because,
yes.
like, we can sit here and talk about having Jim Edmonds and Mark McGwire and Chris Carpenter around, but guess what? If the young player doesn't want the message that's coming to them, then it doesn't matter. The Blues are a perfect example. They've been struggling for 3 years. This team has never once told former players of the Blues to step away. They're always around. But
a lot of them are in the front office.
Yeah, a lot of it. Like, the inner circle is all Blues and hockey Hall of Famers. Like, we had a great conversation with David Backus on Thursday, and talking just with him about leadership and talking about the players. You know, he referenced multiple times. Look, the type of players have changed now in pro sports. Before, it was always about that hard work ethic, and those were the guys that you tried to build your core around. Those are the guys that took the message from whomever is giving it to them and delivered it to the younger players so that they took that and ran with it. And for however many years, the Cardinals always had those guys. And now we're talking about a different generation of players that are in the league that have done things one way all the way up to get to the major leagues. And I have to imagine they're not willing to accept the message most of the times. You've got to build around the right guys who are willing to take everything and decipher what works best. And I think that's what's happening right now with the Cardinals, with the Blues, with a lot of professional sports teams that are taking place.
All right, last text I want to get on this. We'll get to some of your mic drops here in just a moment as well. We've got a few of them in from the 314. Guys, do you think that the concern for the Cardinals could be that the Hall of Famers would have a different approach than what the organization wants? That's totally one of the things that I would imagine the organization is concerned about, which is, hey, we want these guys to be doing X, Y, and Z. And if we have another set of eyes come in, like, eventually you have too many people that have too many different messages, and they're all telling you something slightly different, and you just become like the worst possible version of yourself, right? It's almost the Frankenstein approach, where one person's telling you got to have the toe tap, another person's telling you, no, that's the worst thing you could possibly do for your timing mechanism, whatever. So you do want to streamline things, but what I think personally, as somebody that has never played baseball higher than a level where I was taking a ground ball, I was fielding it, ball went up the lip of my glove, and then it busted my lip, and then I decided I'm done now. That was when I was 8 years old.
Just your lip.
That was great positioning then.
Just your lip. It didn't get...
Good for you.
It didn't get anywhere else on your face. Just your lip.
Just my lip. It was my upper lip. It busted open. I got stitches, and then that was my last time playing baseball. So, yeah. That's me. So you take this or leave it.
Yeah.
But for me, I think you should have different voices that can help coach in different ways. So for one guy, maybe it's Big Mac. For another guy, maybe it is one of those numbers nerds. For another guy, maybe it is just a former player like Brant Brown that has the best possible message. But have all of them available just in case. All right, let's get to the mic drop feature. Let's start with Aaron, number 1. We got multiple Aarons.
The Jim Edmonds thing pretty much shows everything that a lot of us have thought all along. The Cardinals are so in their little bubble that they don't want to look outside. They don't want to try and do it the way that came before. They wanted to get to the analytics method, which is part of why they got rid of Schilt. And I think all those things are fine, but you have to do both. I think stats are great. I think analytics are great, but also, use your own eyes. They've made bad decisions trading players, and they don't want to admit those mistakes. And the Nolan Arenado thing is kind of the dagger. I mean, here's a guy who wanted to be part of your team, and it's gotten so bad that they're telling him no on coaches and Edmonds said he was secretly working out with Jim Edmonds because the Cardinals didn't want him working with someone outside the organization. I mean, I hear fans talking about, why does Nolan Arenado not want to stay? He doesn't want to be part of this. I wouldn't want to be part of it either if my bosses were telling me, no, we don't want to add those things that can help you, and we're going to take some of your friends on the team and get rid of them.
So I think the Arenado thing is tough for me because I get why he wouldn't want to be here. I also get why the Cardinals would want him here. The Arenado experience has not been what either side wanted it to be. We thought it was going to be this great landing spot for him. It was Alex's favorite player that he's been talking about for a decade, the Cardinals.
It was good the first 2 years when they had the former players around, and then all of a sudden the Hall of Famers left, and next thing you know, boom.
Was it, though?
Yeah. Just wait till he goes to another team that lets their Hall of Famers.
2021, he wasn't that great.
It just didn't work.
Better than what they had.
For whatever reason. It didn't work, and there's a lot of different things that can go into that. But for whatever reason, it didn't work. I do think the thing with Big Mac is just weird. Like, why? Why was that?
Yeah, it's not like it was a jaded relationship. I mean, the guy, he was coach here for, 3+ years?
That's what I don't understand, but whatever. All right, let's get to Aaron, number 2.
It doesn't surprise me that the Cardinals don't want the Hall of Famers around anymore. I mean, DeWitt has just lost touch with everything that he does, and his little lapdog, Mo, is just a pathetic excuse for a GM right now, or Pobo, or whatever you want to call him. But, yeah, we need those Hall of Famers around. Chris Carpenter should be a pitching coach, if not the top guy here helping our young guys to be bulldogs. We need Ludwig. We need Larry Walker. We need McGuire. We need guys that are going to actually teach hitting instead of just showing them an iPad.
You can't teach guys to be bulldogs. That's the one thing that I will push back on. Like, these guys can come to spring training and try and talk to these players all they want, but you don't just teach somebody to go out there and play like Chris Carpenter. You don't just teach somebody to go out there and be Larry Walker. The player has to have the talent, and it has to have the willingness to adapt to what you're trying to teach them. I don't think the reason the Cardinals have been so bad for 4 years is because of, to quote Aaron there, the lapdog John Mozeliak. I think the reason the Cardinals haven't been good for so long is they haven't been able to identify the right talent of players. Think about it. Tyler O'Neill was supposed to be Bryce Harper. How'd that one work out for you? Carlos Martinez was supposed to be your next ace.
He had a really good year that one time.
But you know what? What'd they do that one good year, BK?
17-game winning streak.
No, we did this. Choked in the playoffs.
That's true.
Like, you had Carlos Martinez. Wasn't the ace for you like you thought. Jack Flaherty was good for 2 years, parts of 2 years. Yep. Like, we could sit here and say that, well, it's just because these guys don't want the Hall of Famers around. I think part of this is because you haven't been able to pick the right type of players.
Yeah, picking the right guys and then developing them in the right way. All right, let's hear from Courtney.
I like Jim Edmonds. I know he's not a fan favorite to some, but one thing I know I'm going to get from him is honesty. And that's why I liked listening to him on the broadcast as well, because he wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. He was going to tell it how it is. And I know the Cardinals as an organization don't like that type of person. They don't want a guy who says what he feels. Basically, they want a robot. They want someone that's going to keep quiet and, basically do what they're told. And I believe that's why they are where they are now.
I think there's a million reasons why the Cardinals are where they are right now. I think the biggest one, though, for me, can speak for all of you, is because of something that Alex brought up, which is they thought Tyler O'Neill could be Bryce Harper, so there was no reason to go out and get the guy that you thought that Tyler O'Neill could be. Because we've already got him internally, and he's cheap, and he's young, and he's cost-controlled, and all of these different things, right? It used to be, well, this guy could become, I don't know, Scott Rowland. Let's trade him for Scott Rowland. This guy could become Jim Edmonds. Well, let's trade him for Jim Edmonds then.
That formula worked.
That used to be the Cardinals' formula is instead of having these pieces that could become the guy, let's just go get the guy that's ready-made now.
You mean trade projected stats for current stats?
Yeah, production over projection, production over potential. That's the model right now that Mizzou is putting out there, right? We're going to pay for production, not for potential. That's what the Cardinals used to be. And the Cardinals aren't that very much anymore. Now they are all about potential. What can a guy potentially be? That is literally what the 2025 season is all about, is how many of these guys that have potential can turn that into production? We've got to find out eventually. So when that model changed, and there's a million reasons as to why, including the market, that has had this massive trickle-down effects. Also, the lack of relationships with Hall of Famers has played into that. Also, the market has changed. And since COVID, like, there's been this divide that is growing bigger and bigger between the haves and the have-nots in Major League. So there's a lot of different things. The numbers revolution has come to Major League Baseball, and basically over the last decade, everything has changed with the way that teams are incorporating that into their organizations as well. So there's a lot of different aspects of this. But
real quick, one more, because we got a text that says, what about guys like Ozzie and Waino and Yachty and Albert? Think they could help? Are we forgetting that, like, Ozzie is at spring training every single year? Willie McGee was in the dugout for the last 3 seasons with this team. Jim Edmonds mentioned it. Jason Isringhausen is working with all of these pitchers in the minor leagues. Ryan Ludwig is working with these guys like
Daniel Descalso, part of their coaching staff this year. John Jay, a part of their coaching staff. Skip Schumacher was a part of the coaching staff. That was a decision by Ollie Marmol as well. Like, they wanted Yadier Molina to be there last year at spring training, and he chose not to be there as well.
Holiday, they hired him.
They brought Albert Pujols, well, not in a coaching capacity, because he has not wanted to be on a coaching staff just yet. They brought him back in his final season in the major leagues to be a part of that team, and not just because they thought he was going to produce, but also they view that as an important person to have inside of that locker room. And while they may not have all of the former Hall of Famers coming around, they did have Brandon Crawford as a paid friend last year for Nolan Arenado. They did have Matt Carpenter as a paid friend last year for Nolan Arenado.
I didn't like those ones.
I do think some of this stuff is a little overstated. Again, my view on this is I think it is a symptom, not the root cause.
Agreed.
I think that's really what we're talking about here. It's just like, this was one thing that Edmonds brought up earlier today that has really bothered Jim Edmonds because it affects him personally, which is understandable. There are a lot of other things that have gone wrong with the Cardinals organization, and it's, I believe, dating back basically to that COVID season, which is when this also started for Edmonds and others. All right, we'll get into this more coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. We will also begin our new weekly segment that we are going to do every single Monday here on BK and Ferrario for the next 10 weeks. Can you beat the Blues? It's going to be the same thing that we've done over the last couple of seasons. We asked a bunch of Blues players few categories, right? So colors. Name as many colors as you can in 15 seconds. Red, orange, green, yellow, blue, indigo. End of segment. However many they got, they'll be going up against you. And if they got 5, you got 7, you're a +2. We'll have 3 different colors. Today, you're going up against Zach Bolduc as a part of the Can You Beat the Blues? And the winner will go home with a signed hockey puck by Zach Bolduc and some tickets to see the St. Louis Blues. So we'll get into that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. Coming up next, do want to talk a little bit about Mizzou basketball because T-Bone, they passed your Illini today in the poll. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues will be back in action tomorrow night as they host the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. CDMalondoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Mizzou Basketball did something over the weekend that they have not done since 1990. They had their second win against a top 15 ranked opponent in the same season. Woo! Again, they haven't done that in the last 35 years. It goes beyond that, though. Here's the list of college basketball teams this season, T-Bone, with multiple road victories against top 15 ranked opponents. Alabama, they've done it 3 times. That team's very good. Kentucky, they've done it twice, and Missouri, which has now done it twice as well. They did it against Florida, and over the weekend, they did it on the road against Mississippi State. Here's another one for you, because this is a list that includes, from this season, only Missouri and T-Bone's Illini. The list of college basketball teams in the last decade to win a regular season game on the road against top 15 opponent by at least 27 points. Mizzou on Saturday. Illinois against Oregon earlier this year.
Oh, I said some bad things after that.
Virginia on the road at Clemson in 2021, and Michigan on the road at Villanova back in 2018. That's it. It's 4 teams in the last decade. 2 of them have taken place this season with Missouri and Illinois, the 2 local schools that we most prominently discuss. Although SLU, yes, we have not forgot about you SLU fans, but your team's going to have to win the conference tournament, and they did not have a good showing over the weekend to make us talk about them today. So
that's your SLU talk.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mizzou, since that win over the weekend, has now bumped up to number 15 in the country. They are now ranked ahead of Kansas and Memphis. And yes, T-Bone's Illini.
Unbelievable. Doesn't head-to-head matter?
Not even a top 20 team. Joke.
This Missouri team is the first one since I was a freshman in college that I can genuinely dream on. There have been good Mizzou teams over the last decade. Not many of them, but a couple. But the last time that I had this kind of belief in Missouri was the first year under Frank Haith, when he had a 7-man rotation, and it was Kim English and Marcus Denman. They beat Kansas. That was the final year in the Big 12. They ended up winning the Big 12 tournament, and of course, we all know how that ends with them losing to Norfolk State in the first round. This is the first time that I've truly believed in a Mizzou team since then. Caleb Grill is one of the best shooters in the country, if not the very best shooter in the country. They have Tamar Bates, who's averaging like 18 points a game right now. Mark Mitchell is not the perfect player, but he's a pretty damn good one when he's in the right role. And then they've got, like, on any given night, 6 other dudes that could have real contributions. And it changes depending on what the opponent is, what the matchup is, what they need, whether it's size or shooting or whatever. There's just a really good, really deep, well-rounded team. I have bought in hook, line, and sinker in a way that I did not expect to this season. And I think maybe most importantly, big picture-wise, it proves to us that last year was the fluke, and year 1 with Dennis Gates was more the norm.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you about.
That to me really, really matters.
So you said this is the first one in a long time. That year 1 of Dennis Gates, you weren't as high on them as this?
No, that was a really fun team, but they were incredibly flawed. They didn't play defense. Like, the only way they could get stops was with steals. That team did not have the potential to really go on a deep tournament run. This team does.
And they were living through one player. Like, they were living through Kobe Brown.
And DeBoy Hodge, he was a good shooter. But that was it. It was those 2 guys.
This team's got 7 legit players that every single time they step on the court, I think they're going to impact it. And we've talked about this before. Like, they have a real rotation that they use. Last year, it felt like every single player on the team was used at some point, and you're like, wait, what are we doing here? Now there's 7 guys that step on the court, or maybe 8 guys in a game, and that's it. And that's just trust from your coach. And I'm with you. Like, this team's got me excited, and it's all because of their ability to play 2 different types of basketball. Like, that Kansas game, I still go back to because they played bully ball in that one. Like, they went up there and they man-to-man them nonstop. They got better rebound production from them. They won underneath the basket. But then you talk about their offensive side of the game. Like, right now, it feels like this team can't miss 3-pointers. So if you combined those 2, they're the 7th best team in the SEC. Like, I didn't expect that at all this season. For a team that didn't win an SEC game last year, you've got a rotation that can compete with these teams in the SEC, which is more than I expected.
Somebody from the 980 said, BK, just being honest, it doesn't take much for you to be all in on a team. I'm just saying that based on your history from this show. First of all,
that is true. Yeah,
true. Don't appreciate that. Second of all, this one's real, though. You guys have seen my opinions on Mizzou basketball over the last 10 years, really, since I've been on the air here in St. Louis. There are very few times where I've actually bought into the team. Very few. I liked that team that Alex was talking about, the one that was first year under Dennis Gates. It was really exciting because it was the first time in quite a while that they had just a really fun team to watch. That was all it was. It was just a really fun team. They shot it well, and they played up tempo, and they had a really good player in Kobe Brown and a really good shooter in DeBoy Hodge. That's kind of it. And so you knew, hey, the ceiling for this is limited. The ceiling is probably getting to the second weekend. Maybe you can make it to the Sweet 16, but that's based on matchups more than anything else. And they ended up playing Princeton in the second round. So it was like, okay, you might be able to get to the Sweet 16 this year, but that was it. I'm ready to say some wild stuff about this Mizzou team.
Oh, careful. I did that after that Illinois
champs
destroyed that Oregon game you made reference to. I said this is the best team since their team that got to the championship, and then they've lost like 6 of their last 8 or something like that.
I want to see what wild stuff BK wants to say. Go for it.
This Mizzou team has shown it's capable of beating anybody in the country. If you can beat Florida on the road, you're capable of beating most teams. If you can beat Ole Miss at home, you're capable of beating a lot of teams. They were right there with Illinois. Illinois is a very good team, although maybe a little more flawed than at one point in the season we thought. And Missouri appears to be getting better as the season progresses, and they're going through a gauntlet of a schedule in the SEC. If you can finish top 4 in the SEC, which right now Missouri is, you can go to the Final Four. It will be harder to win the SEC tournament this year based on the quality of the opponents that you play than it will be to win the NCAA title. And I know that sounds crazy. It sounds like this just ludicrous thing to say, but look at the number of top 25 teams currently in the SEC that you would have to face on the path to winning that title. And then look at the number of top 25 teams that you would have to face, most likely, in order to win a national championship. It will be fewer of those high-level teams in the tournament than it is in the NCAA tournament, than it is in the SEC tournament. I think this team is capable of getting to the Elite Eight or maybe even beyond. They are that good.
Well, there goes the first round upset.
Oh.
Yeah. Damn, man.
Another 15.
I just wish you wouldn't have said that.
They could lose in the first round.
They could lose in the first round. Or they could be a Final Four team.
Or they could make it to the Final Four. T-Bone, don't you feel that way about Illinois?
Yeah, I do.
This is college basketball in 2025.
I'll say this, as the season has gone on, I feel better about Missouri than I do Illinois.
Hell yeah, brother.
Because I look at Missouri, I don't see major flaws, right? Like you mentioned that team 2 years ago, like they couldn't play defense, and that was what was going to kill them, especially if they went cold for a night. This Missouri team, I don't see that. They win the rebounding margin. They play defense. They can shoot the 3.
They get to the foul line as much as just about any team in the country. Like they really... They drive to the bucket all the time, and they are very good at drawing fouls.
And unlike Illinois, they have an Achilles heel, and for some reason they keep playing to it. And what I'm referencing for Illinois is, hey, they are a good team. I think it is the best pure talent team Underwood's had at Illinois. But they love to run an NBA-style offense, which is layup or three-point shot. Problem is they shoot the most three-pointers in the country and are 300th in the country in three-point shooting percentage.
So
that's a major flaw. That's a flaw right there that I can see where you get behind early, and this is where they've started, where they've gone through this 4 of 6 or 4 of 7, I think, now that they've lost, where they get behind early, they panic, and they say, all right, now it's hunt the three-point shot. It's like, no, you're not good at the three-point shot. Quit shooting the damn ball.
They basically do what opposing defenses want them to do,
yes,
which is shoot. And they do it willingly and on their own accord.
Yes.
Whereas Missouri will dictate what the defense makes them do. They can take it to opponents as opposed to vice versa. So it's a lot of fun to watch right now, and they are a team that I truly do believe in. I know it. I understand it. Sometimes I can overstate things. This team's really good, and I believe they can get to the Final Four. This team could win the title. I don't think they're that good. I think there's just some legitimately elite level teams right now. Auburn and Duke, to me, are the 2 best teams in the country. But Missouri could get to a Final Four depending on what their draw is.
Just why couldn't you just enjoyed watching it and not made a statement like that to ruin it? Can't we just enjoy it, man?
No.
Because they're going to lose their next 4 because of what you said.
The Junk Drawer coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Along with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So, Alex, I went last weekend. People know this. My wife is a Disney adult, which means...
mine too.
Yeah. As an adult, she likes going to Disney World, which means she likes going there for her birthday, and I also go with her because I like making my wife happy, and that is something that makes her happy.
That's smart, man.
I've heard happy wife, happy life.
So the reason why I bring this up, that's where I was last week as we went down there for her final birthday trip without Luka. And all I could think to myself while we were down there without Luka is, oh my God, this is about to get expensive. Because when we go down there, it's one thing, right? Like, Kara can spend money on whatever she wants to do, but otherwise it's just we get our hotel, we get the passes, we go do whatever we want to. Once you add a kid into the mix and now you're adding in like all of the expenses that come along with that, I can't help but wonder, how do families of more than 3 find a way to go to a place like a Disney World?
Yeah, how'd you do that?
Go when they're free and then don't ever go again. Okay. Because we went,
it's insane.
We went the first 2 years. So when Adelaide was 2 and Emma was 1, that was our first trip. Oh, no, I'm sorry. When Adelaide was 1.5 and Emma was like 6 months, that was our first trip, both free. And then the second trip we did last year, Adelaide was 2 and Emma was 1, and all of it was free. And I think Katie and I, we were able to kind of keep that trip to like $1,500 total with flight and everything.
I don't know how.
Impressive.
Cheaply. But we did it because we were going to Disney. We wanted to experience it.
Sure.
Now we're looking at going again because kind of think it's unfair for Olivia, who hasn't been yet. We looked, and now both of our girls aren't free. Minimum $5,000.
Yep.
Minimum.
Leaving them.
And when we went, no, I wish. And we went for like 3 days. Like we do it quick. It's you go, you hit a park, you one more park, and then you come home that night. You do it quick. Food, everybody's splitting. There's like nothing. Now it's like, man, I can't even afford to go cheap. Going cheap is a lot of money. So enjoy the first 2 years at Luka's free because beyond that, buddy.
We just got 1. We're just doing 1.
Oh, okay.
He'll be 2.5 next year when we decide to go. It's the last one. They're free until they're 3, and then game over. That's it for us. I do want to take one trip with him later on this year because we did the trip very early on. He was like 4 months old. We went to Austin, Texas, took him out there. Yes, for all of you on the text line that are going to criticize me, we went to a bunch of breweries with my son. We had a really great time
freaking
with
believable, man.
Down there.
I bet he had a great time at the brewery, too.
Yeah, as he was 4 months old doing nothing. But now, he's insane.
Oh, yeah.
So flying and traveling is not quite the same experience that it was when he was 4 months old and he just sit there, right?
Yep.
So we've got to figure out what the move is to do like a trial run on this prior to Disney World. So that is what we're going to try to do over the next 6 months is figure out, okay, where can we go that's reasonably affordable, that is not a like drivable distance, so not like Memphis or something like that, not Kansas City. Got to fly, and you stay there for a few days for us to get a trial run prior to us.
You know, the flying thing I didn't think was that bad because I think the kids are so enamored with being in a plane. You bring like books and sticker books and things like that. Like we got through that flight to Disney because it was like 3.5 hours. The problem was when we went this last time, our girls didn't want to sit in the stroller. It was, we want to run around. And there's no running around at Disney World.
Yeah. I used to make fun of people that put their kids on the leash.
Mm-hmm.
I now need multiple.
We didn't do the leash. And look, in parenting, you do what you're most comfortable with. I've learned that a lot. We didn't do the leash, but my wife it was a wrist thing. So it attaches to her wrist and attaches to their wrists because she's like, nope, they're going to get away. And even our oldest Adelaide, she found a way to Houdini or she'd pull it off and then just book it. And it's like, oh, this will be fun. Good luck with that, buddy.
So yeah, that was our experience at Disney World last week. It was great. It was our last one, and I realized in the moment, oh boy, this could be a little different.
Soak it all in.
Probably a depressing moment, wasn't it?
It's kind of fun because you're thinking about all of the great things that are going to be able to be experienced.
You forget the stress once you get the kid there and see it.
Sure, and then you see the bank statement afterwards, and that's when the stress begins. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of Can You Beat the Blues? We'll tell you how you can potentially go up against Zach Bolduc or Oscar Sundquist in just a little bit. But next, John Mozeliak explained yesterday why the Cardinals opted against selling their assets. Sure sounds to me like a guy that feels like he's stuck in between again. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, can you beat the Blues? Coming up in about 10 minutes. If you are wanting to compete against Zach Bolduc or Oscar Sundqvist with a chance to win a Zach Bolduc signed hockey puck and 2 tickets to the Blues versus the Blackhawks, that game is coming up on February the 8th. Text in right now at 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Text in, I can beat the Blues. If you are selected and you are one of those 3 lucky winners, you'll be going up against either Zach Bolduc or Oscar Sundqvist in our next segment. But John Mozeliak was on the Cardinals radio network yesterday, and he was asked about why the Cardinals decided to go down this path where Ryan Helsley's still on the roster and Wilson Contreras still on the roster, Sonny Gray still on the roster, and yet they're trying to do this youth movement. Why not sell more of your assets? And Eric Fetty, another one. Why not sell more of those assets this winter? Here's John Mozeliak.
Right now there's some fans that are annoyed we didn't blow the team up more. I think there's others that are hoping that we can be a competitive club. So it's just really a fine line to walk. And I think what we're really trying to accomplish is give a lot of our younger players an opportunity so we know what we have, but still try to put a competitive product out there so our fans have a reason to show and be excited about it. So trying to kind of walk 2 parallel paths here, it's difficult. Obviously if things don't go the way we hope, then you have the season to then look at ways to arbitrage your players as you start to think about the future. But if things go well, then from an ownership standpoint on down, then we can look at it a little differently as well.
I didn't let you guys hear this beforehand because neither of you had heard this interview yesterday.
This pisses me off. This is unbelievable.
What did you guys think of that?
Did you hear the backup truck taking place? Beep, 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 beep. Let me take you back to, about a month ago when there were 17 press conferences held to talk about a retool and bringing in the youth and moving on some of these big contracts so these younger players can play. And now we're talking about, we're trying to walk this fine line of where we want the youth to get it. But look, we're still trying to be competitive to make sure people want to come to the ballpark. And you know what? If we can't be competitive, meaning if we suck the first 2 months of the season, then we'll just try and move on from some of these players. BK, we are taking a back road to what it was, where, we'll be competitive with the guys that we have, and if not, then we'll adjust on the fly.
T-Bone, what was your reaction?
It sounds a lot like what I've been watching for the last couple of years, because it is a little younger, right? Like he said, we're on parallel paths. That's been going on in Cardinals baseball for the last 5 years now? Where it is, hey, we've got some young guys. We're going to make sure they get an opportunity to play. But, hey, look, we got these guys that we're going to still keep around the team, right? We're going to keep a Goldschmidt. We're going to keep – the only difference this year is they didn't add to it, right? That would have been a typical Cardinals offseason was, all right, we lost Paul Goldschmidt. Maybe we go out there and get a Christian Walker on the deal he got, a 3-year, $60 million deal. Sounds like they're doing the same thing. They just didn't bring in that one piece. At least not yet. They may add a bullpen arm, but...
So you're not fully embracing what you had 17 press conferences about, of a full youth movement. We talked about this on Friday, BK. I'm getting pissed right now. We talked about this on Friday.
Yeah, that's your fault.
This is your fault. They were supposed to have a rotation to where they had 2 of these younger arms that were getting looks as starters. And now you haven't moved on from Fetty. You couldn't move on from Michaelis or Sonny Gray. That's 3 if we're keeping count at home. Palante's going to be there. And Steven Matz is a part of this rotation. Who's the young guys that you're getting looks at in the rotation this year, BK?
Just one.
Palante. When there were supposed to be 2 more of those guys in this, Graceffo and McGreevy. And I fully expect to start the season, Graceffo and McGreevy are going to be pitching for the Memphis Redbirds.
Or in the bullpen.
No, I don't think it'll be the bullpen.
There's a real chance that McGreevy's in the bullpen.
I think. But why? This was supposed to be a youth movement. This was supposed to be a refresh. And now this is we might be competitive. I don't know what they're seeing that they think they could be competitive, because the NL Central is at least making efforts to be a little bit more competitive than you are.
Feels repurposed more than it is refreshed, right?
It feels to me as though they're doing the same thing that they've done. I think you hit it on the head, T-Bone. Same thing that they've done for the last 7 years. They just didn't re-sign the guys. That's it. That's the difference. They didn't re-sign Goldie. They didn't end up re-signing Kittredge. They didn't bring back at least one of either Lance Lynn or Kyle Gibson. In previous iterations of the Cardinals, they would have done all of those things. And then they probably would have gone out there and, signed a bench bat. Right-handed bench bat with a little bit of thump. maybe they would have brought in some kind of a reliever, like instead of the Royals signing Estevez the other day. It would have been the Cardinals that ended up signing him to a 3-year deal worth $30 million. And then boom, you're going into the season, and Estevez is kind of your big addition.
Gets hurt.
You're hoping for some kind of improvements from the guy. I didn't necessarily have a problem with them keeping Ryan Helsley. It makes sense to me. I can understand how you can convince yourself, A, let's go ahead and see what this team looks like. Maybe they're a little better than expected. And B, there is an unintended consequence of holding him, which is at the deadline, we could probably get more than what is currently being offered to us now. That makes sense. Why is Steven Matz still on this roster? Anybody know?
No.
Nope.
What are you doing with Eric Fetty? Anybody know?
That's the one I don't get,
yeah,
right?
that's the one that pisses me off.
Like if you looked at Matz and said, okay, maybe he's a guy that we have in the rotation, or this is where it makes sense to me. We put him in the bullpen, and maybe we can trade him. Maybe he gets value by the deadline as a bullpen arm, because he does have some swing and miss when he's right. So I could get that one. Fetty's one I don't get, because this is the highest his value's ever going to be on the market, because every other starter is getting $10 to $15 million that has Eric Fetty profile, and he's making $7.5. And he's not going to become more valuable at the deadline. In fact, he's probably going to be less valuable at the deadline. And that's just because number 3s and 4s don't get sold for pretty pennies at the deadline. You got him by shedding salary, right? Cardinals gave up nothing for him. That's kind of what I would expect in return if you went to trade him at the deadline. That's the one that doesn't make sense to me.
Yep, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense, and it is why I believe that they are once again doing the thing that they've been doing. The only real difference this offseason is instead of adding a little bit of payroll, they ended up deciding to shed some payroll.
No,
that's it. But they're the same like stuck in between team that they've been for the last 5 years.
Yep.
So for all the talk about the reset, they have opened up minimal, if any, opportunities for young players. Because Palante, your rotation as of today for opening day is probably Sonny, Fetty, Michaelis, Matz, Palante.
Yep.
Does not include McGreevy, does not include Graceffo, does not include any of those younger guys. There's really no opportunities for them, barring somebody getting hurt. And that's frustrating to me and super disappointing given what had been sold, because I was like their target demographic for what they were selling going into this offseason.
Line and sinker.
No, I said I want to see this first. Like, prove to me that you're actually going to go down this path, but if this is the path that you're choosing, it makes sense to me. They didn't do that. They once again got stuck in the middle. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to play a game of Can You Beat the Blues here on BK and Ferrario.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Classic Air Care. When it comes to your HVAC system, use the company that have been making people comfortable since 1926. Whether you've got an older unit in your home and you're concerned it's going to die on you very soon, or you got a brand new one and you want to maintain the life of that as long as you can, that's where Classic Air Care's maintenance agreement comes into play. I've been using it since 2016 when we purchased our first home. Had a 26-year-old unit. We moved out of that home in 2020, and it was able to get us through those 4 years, all the way up to being 27, 28 years old. And that's because Classic Air Care, twice a year, before the winter, before the summer, they come out and they check it, they clean it, fine tune it, make sure there's no issues, and then it's good to go for the upcoming season. And if there's issues that pop up, you're priority because you're a part of the maintenance agreement. So you call, they get you on the schedule as quick as they can, come out, resolve the problem. Typically, it's done in a couple of days. That's what's happened with me in the past. So call Classic Air Care, get on the schedule, ask them about the maintenance agreement. Just tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. That's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
We've been playing this game for a couple of years. It's a very simple game. It's called Can You Beat the Blues? And Alex, when we went out there for Media Day at the beginning of the season, we asked the Blues a bunch of different categories. So we've got Zach Bolduc and Oscar Sundqvist going up today. They're going to be going up against Mark, Dan, and Buzz. The game's pretty simple. If I ask Alex, hey, name as many different colors as you can, you'll get 15 seconds to do so. On your mark, get set, go.
Red, blue, green, yellow, black, brown.
Alex got 4.
That wasn't 15
if
seconds.
we then went to the listener and they got 6, the listener would be a +2. Whoever has the best margin going up against the Blues today will be taking home a hockey puck signed by Zach Bolduc and 2 tickets to Saturday's game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, we've got Mark, Dan, and Buzz on the line today. Let's start out with Mark. Mark, do you understand the rules? We appreciate you playing the game today, my friend.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Yes, I do understand the rules.
Mark,
All right.
I love the energy.
Mark, would you rather go up against Oscar Sundqvist or Zach Bolduc today?
No, let's do Zach Bolduc.
All right, Mark, you are going up against Zach Bolduc today, and you will be having the category. I'm going to name this category, and then you're going to have 15 seconds to name as many different things within it as you can. Baseball teams. Name as many different baseball teams as you can in 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Cardinals, Cubs, White Sox, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Marlins, Braves, Dodgers, Giants, Angels. Oh, God, there's like a million more.
Mark, I got you with 11. More. Did you guys get 11?
I had 11.
That's what I had,
It's only 19 more, Mark, so that's a pretty good ratio.
Mark, what's your favorite sport? I think T-Bone potted him down.
Mark, did you just...
Don't blame me.
Did you hang up on Mark?
I didn't hang up on Mark.
Mark muted it. He's like, I don't want to say anything.
No, my earbuds died.
Don't blame me.
It's the AirPods. I called T-Bone, did that one on purpose, Mark.
Mark, what's your favorite sport, my friend?
My favorite sport,
hockey. All right. We gave you a tough one there.
Then with baseball.
Yeah. Believe it or not, Zach Bolduc watched a ton of baseball growing up. Big-time baseball fan. He's the hockey and baseball fan. So we asked him to name as many baseball teams as he can in 15 seconds. Let's see if he knows his baseball.
Cardinals, Blue Jays, Red Sox, Pirates. It's probably an easy win.
I can understand his confusion. It's the Pirates, but they play like P-Rats, so I get it.
True. That is true.
Yeah. Well, once he said P-Rats, it was game over, and he was like, there's no coming back from this.
I'm sure there's a little bit that's lost in translation there. Mark got 11. I had Zach Bolduc down with 4.
So it's a +7 for Mark.
And Zach said at the end there, if you didn't hear this, T-Bone, can you replay that ending from Zach Bolduc real quick?
Probably an easy win.
Probably an
easy win. He was correct in that.
Congratulations, Mark. You got a +7. Let's go out to Dan. He's going to try to beat the Blues as well. Dan, we appreciate you playing our game today. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic, Dan. Dan, do you understand the rules of the game?
Yes, sir.
All right. Dan, would you rather go up against Zach Bolduc or Oscar Sundqvist today?
I'm going to go against Bolduc with that last answer.
Smart. Right. Go for the rookie. I get this one, Dan.
Dan's going up against Zach Bolduc. Dan is going to have 15 seconds to name as many different things within this category as he can. And your category today is ballpark concessions. Name as many different ballpark concessions as you can in 15 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Hamburgers, hot dogs, soda, beer, pretzels, nachos, Dippin' Dots, ice cream, popcorn, Cracker Jacks, sub sandwiches.
You were questioning if sub sandwiches was allowed, and Dan, you should have kept going. We loved it. You missed the stir fry though, the fried rice.
I can't believe people eat that.
That's especially when it's 100-something degrees outside.
If it's like late March, early April, or then you get into October, okay, cool, I'm good with that. If it's 90+ degrees outside and you're eating that,
God,
I've got some follow-up.
Did Dan say nachos?
He did, yeah, early on.
I was going to say, would we have accepted nachos and barbecue pulled pork nachos?
Yeah, I guess they're different.
Okay, I'm just asking. I'm just asking for a friend.
Dan got 11. Let's see if Zach Bolduc knows his ballpark concessions.
Peanuts, hot dog, drink a slush, hamburger, cheeseburger, seeds.
Just when you thought you were in it, Dan, you were thinking, oh, he's blanked and he's not going to get this one, and then he reels off 4 more.
Yes.
So I got him at a +5.
I got Bolduc with 6. So that's a +5 for Dan. So Dan, unfortunately, you did beat the Blues. You just didn't beat Mark.
I'll try. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for playing, Dan.
Thanks for playing today. All right, so Dan is now eliminated. Mark is in the lead in the clubhouse. He's got a +7, and now we're going out to see how Buzz does. And Buzz, you're going up against Oscar Sundquist today. How you doing, my man?
What's up, boys? I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing really well.
Buzz, how often do you hear people say to infinity and beyond?
Yeah, often.
Okay, good. I wasn't going to say it. I was just asking for a friend.
Obviously, Alex wasn't going to be one of those people.
No, I wasn't going to say to infinity and beyond here.
Okay, we can go ahead and we can share our misery about your to infinity and beyond in my BK lounge. We can commiserate over that later on.
BK,
that one too.
Have it your way.
Yep. All right, Buzz, you're going up against Oscar Sundquist today. Do you understand the rules of the game, my friend?
Yes, I do.
All right, Buzz.
Buzz, your category today. Name as many different things as you can that you can do in St. Louis in 15 seconds. Things that you can do in St. Louis. On your mark, get set, go.
Art Hill, Art Museum, History Museum, Zoo, Arch, the Fox. Go to a concert at the Pageant, concert at Riverport. Go to the Casino Queen. Go to the Busch Stadium. Go to the Blues game. Go to the Muni. Go to the Loop. Go to Union Station. Go to the soccer game. Go to...
Whoa!
All right, Buzz, it was a great round.
Buzz blacked out there for a couple of seconds.
Buzz, you from St. Louis?
Yes, yeah. I live in
No, I'm from Milwaukee.
Sorry, I almost passed out there.
He stopped breathing on the last 5, so I got Buzz at 15.
I had him at 14.
I had him at 14 as well.
Okay, so maybe I just got too aggressive with Buzz there.
Buzz, out of curiosity, did you just go by location? Because it felt like you started in Forest Park, and I could feel myself going through the city with you.
Yeah, that's exactly a very simple idea here. I just went literally from place to place.
I like it.
So Buzz did really well. Oscar Sundquist has made St. Louis his home.
Yeah.
Let's see how many things Oscar Sundquist can name that you would do in St. Louis.
Go to a City game, go to a Blues game, goes to a Cardinals game, go to a Battlehawk game, go to Botanical Garden, go to On the Hill, go to Billy G's in Kirkwood, go to Louis on the Mon.
Ooh.
I got him at 8.
I got him at 8 as well.
So just saying, I thought Buzz had 15.
You're the worst.
I thought Buzz had 15.
Justice for Buzz, huh?
Justice for Buzz.
Unfortunately, that means you get a +6, which means Mark is our winner today.
Buzz.
Mark, congratulations, my friend. You did fantastic. You went up against Zach Bolduc. You got the win. You did indeed beat the Blues.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. That is just wonderful.
Hell
Absolutely.
yeah.
Stay on the line. We'll make sure to get all your info. Mark today is going home with a signed hockey puck from Zach Bolduc and 2 tickets to see the Blues versus the Blackhawks this Saturday, February the 8th. If you didn't get a chance today, we're going to be doing this for the next 9 weeks here on BK and Ferrario. We'll give you a chance to be able to beat the Blues.
I would just like to say that, Buzz, you've got a friend in me.
To infinity beyond.
He had 15. Just
at the buzzer.
What do you think would have been
Mark
your hardest?
Had like 20. We went by how fast he was
Mark
going.
was just reeling them off.
Ballpark concessions would have been a good one. What would your?
I wouldn't have been able to do the St. Louis one. I think I would have blanked.
Strategy have been on baseball teams.
I would have just went by division.
I would have too.
Yeah, like I would have started probably in the NL Central, and then went NL East.
I just
NL
would have done
West.
National League and tried to get 15 of them.
Yeah. I think I could have done pretty good on baseball.
The concessions I probably would have been good at because you just start naming food and you would have got away with it. The city, what you would do in St. Louis, I would blank on that because you'd get like a couple of the easy ones and then that's it. Then you just start. Although all you need to do is start rattling off some restaurants on the hill and you could probably get about 15 to 20 of them.
I think I would panic on concessions. I really do.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alex, on yours, which is just start naming things within a category in St. Louis.
Yeah, you just pick parks and start naming parks in St. Louis. You just start naming restaurants on the Hill. Like, you can rattle them off, but my mind wouldn't be going there. It would go to Art Hill, the Zoo, Forest Park, and then be like, oh, shoot, what else is there?
All right, congratulations to Mark again. We'll do this each and every Monday here on BK and Ferrario for the next several weeks. So if you didn't get a chance today, you'll have a chance later on to be able to beat the Blues. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get into our BK and Ferrario Rewind, going through the top stories of the day. Anything you missed, we'll get into that coming up in 15 minutes. But next, the Blues are going through a retool right now, and they're hoping they're building around the right players. But are they missing the most important piece that could get them out of this retool? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
T-Bone here to tell you about Pick 6 from DraftKings, as it's Super Bowl 59 this weekend, and that means it's your last chance to play NFL Pick 6 this season. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6, and it's super easy to get started. Select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Looking at the Super Bowl this weekend, I'm thinking Travis Kelce more than 61.5 receiving yards, A.J. Brown more than 70.5 receiving yards, and Jalen Hurts more than 211.5 passing yards. 10 on that can win you 40 plus. In Chiefs Kingdom, win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use my code 101WXOS. That's code 101WXOS for new customers to play $5 and get $59 in Pick 6 credits, only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus award is non-withdrawable Pick 6 credit that expires in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tomorrow as they host the Edmonton Oilers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. This Sports Center is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent Mary Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, Alex, so as we watch the St. Louis Blues, it feels to me like the thing we've been talking about for a while is probably the thing that's missing. They don't have a true superstar. They've got guys that you could argue are stars, like Jordan Kyrou. He's probably going to get to 35 goals this season. He's a star in the NHL right now. But he's not on the level. He's not transcended the way that like Cale Makar or Nathan McKinnon are for the Colorado Avalanche, or the way that Matthew Tkachuk is for the Florida Panthers. I mean, you look at these top teams in the NHL right now, they have guys on that level, future Hall of Fame caliber players, and the Blues don't have that piece. I think there was hope that you could build it the way that they did in 2019, where you look back and you're like, man, don't know if any of them are necessarily superstars. Ryan O'Reilly, really freaking good hockey player. Not sure he's a superstar. Alex Pietrangelo, amazing defenseman. Not sure if he's a superstar. You could argue maybe Jordan Binnington, based on the story, was, but like
it's 1 year.
Yeah, it's kind of
Half
at that
of
point
a
a one-hit wonder. I think there's been a lot of questions on, can you recreate that? And some would say yes. Some would say that's the best way to go about it. We are now a few years into this thing with this retool. How do you feel about that today, Alex? Can this team get to where it wants to go if they do not have a true, legitimate superstar on the roster?
It's a lot more difficult than what I originally thought, because I thought they could go about it that way if you have buy-in completely from the team. And obviously that's what's faulting this team right now. And if you don't have a full commitment with the 21 guys that are on the ice, it's going to be really, or the 20 guys that are on the ice, it's going to be very difficult to win that way. Just look at the Western Conference. Every one of these teams has a legit superstar on it that are a playoff team. Winnipeg's got Connor Hellebuck. Dallas has Miro Heiskanen. Minnesota's got Kaprizov. Edmonton's got 2 of them. Vegas has got Jack Eichel. LA's got Anze Kopitar. Colorado's got 2 of them. And then look at the 3 teams that are fighting for one of those playoff spots. Calgary, Vancouver, and St. Louis. You could argue Vancouver's got one, but it hasn't gotten them very far. Calgary's performing the best right now, and I don't think anybody expects that. I always go back to Doug Armstrong when he spoke with the media 2 years ago and said, like, look, we're about to go into a little bit of a retool. And we hope that it's the same timeline as the LA Kings was. And that was a 3-year retool where they missed the playoffs, got back into it. If you check back in on it, you're threatening to not do what the LA Kings did. And the one thing I always go back to that the LA Kings accomplished that the Blues have yet to is they went 3 straight years drafting in the top 5, or top 10, I guess, if you want to call it that, because they had an 8th overall pick, a 2nd overall pick, and a 5th overall pick. And it's no coincidence that all 3 of those players are impactful players on that team that already has stars in Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. And by the way, one of those guys was drafted in the top 3. As much as I want to believe that the Blues can do a pack mentality, and they've got some guys that might be stars. We don't know. Snuggerud and Dvorsky. The odds tell you that it's not possible, but maybe it could. I can't help but wonder if you keep doing this to where you're good for a couple of months, you're bad for a couple of months, and you end each season by missing the playoffs, drafting somewhere between 12 and 15. At what point do you sit there and say, man, this is great, but we are missing the one thing that all of these teams have had success with, and that's finding a superstar. Now, maybe they can go out there and spend for one. Maybe they can go out there for trade for one. But right now, with the ups and downs that you've gone through, I have to wonder that in the back of the mind of the front office, are they looking at this saying, maybe this is the year we need a top 5 pick?
Who would you guess today are the top 2 players for the Kings in terms of point producers, Alex?
I would put Kopitar and Adrian Kempe.
Yep, those are the top 2.
And Kempe was a pretty decent draft pick for them too, I think.
29th overall.
Yep.
The reason why I bring that up is because, yes, they did get top 5 selections. They did pick really high in the draft. Really, it's just Byfield that's become anything of significance for them. And this year, he's played in 50 games and has 25 points. So he's not a star. He's not on the level of what we're talking about here. They've gone out and they've supplemented their team with guys from the outside, and then their stars internally have become the stars that they needed them to be. Like, Kempe would be kind of similar probably to what like Robert Thomas would be. You got him kind of later on in the draft, and he just really developed into this really, really good player for you internally.
Honestly, probably like a Jordan Cairo.
Sure. However you want to rate. It's one of those two, though, right? One of those two becoming the guy that you needed them to be. And then Kopitar just has remained at this incredibly high level, longer than probably what anybody would have otherwise anticipated. So if we're going to compare it to that, like they just had the stars already, and it became about supplementing it. The Blues' problem is they don't have those stars, and they haven't drafted them, and it is harder to get them when you're not picking in the top 5. So it becomes what the Cardinals have been, which is just like this really nice team that's got a lot of supplementary pieces, but they don't have the dude that makes everything else fall into place the way that they did in the early 2000s. And when you're missing that piece, everything else becomes more difficult. It's like an NFL team that has a really good defense and really nice pass catchers, good coaching, but they don't have the quarterback. Well, nothing else matters then. You're basically ineligible to win the Super Bowl when you don't have that guy in place. The same thing is true to a degree, in my opinion, in the NHL right now. And I think with the announcement last week, and we'll talk about this a little bit more as the week progresses, but there was an announcement last week that the salary cap is going to increase significantly in future seasons, like $10 million per year over the next 3 years. I believe that's going to make it even that much more important for you to have a superstar. And the reason why is because teams that already have those guys, now they're getting that relief that they needed, where they can continue to add supplementary pieces. So they're not hemorrhaging the depth pieces to continue to maintain the guys that are already on the roster. And the real winners whenever this cap goes up is the team that already has the stars locked into long-term contracts at like $10 million a year, because the cap going up means it's going to be by the percentage of it. So the stars of the league are going to make $15 to $17 million per year soon, and they're going to have their top guys locked in for 10 to 12. So there's a gap there, and then they can continue to supplement that roster. The Blues need to get involved in that. And I don't know where you get that guy. I don't know who it is. But if it's not going to come internal, if Thomas and Cairo or Booch are not going to take that next step, that has to be the offseason plan, is to try like hell to go get one of those dudes.
Yeah, and you're going to have to, if you're not drafting in the top 5, which at least from everything that I've read, you got to be a top 6 pick if you want to get somebody who has the potential to be an all-star in this year's draft. Because beyond that, you're just talking about role players, guys that fit into your middle 6, which has been a lot of what you've drafted. And if you're not getting them in the draft, and I don't think this team's going to be in a position to go out there and get them in free agency, and we talked this on Friday, there's really not many guys that are in free agency. Like Rantanen's going to be one of them, but over the next few years, there's not going to be a lot of them. You're going to have to make a trade. And to make a trade, you're going to have to move one of Thomas Cairo or Pavel Buchnevich. And Wyshynski told us on Wednesday, like, yeah, there's interest if you decide to go down the path of trading Thomas or Cairo. He did not mention Pavel Buchnevich. It's going to be an aggressive move that we talked a little bit ago. Like, are you making the right one? You're going to have to take a risk if you feel like one of those guys aren't developing into the star that you need them to be.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, we'll hit the rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
That 101 ESPN app is free to download, and it is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. So if you want to check that out, if you want to check out the Jim Edmonds interview from earlier today, he was on with TMA. It was well worth your time. There was some interesting stuff in there. Alex, I think it's going to make a lot of news, and for good reason. There's a lot of things that were said in that interview by Jim Edmonds I think Cardinals fans are feeling, and many of them are things that we've discussed in the past, but he just expanded on them as a guy that was like a Hall of Fame level, in my opinion, at least, player for the organization who had been on the broadcast. He had helped a lot of guys out with their hitting side of things. So when he adds his voice and his credibility to these complaints, it's obviously going to make a lot of circulation. I think a lot of what he had to say earlier today was a symptom of a greater problem. I do think that the Cardinals have lost their way a little bit, and that's been happening over, you could call it the last 7 years, but I think especially since COVID, especially when they decided to eliminate a lot of the positions of their roving instructors. That included a lot of the former players, and they have not really built that back up until this offseason. So I think a lot of that is valid critiques. I also think some of it will probably be made more than needs to be made of. I think a lot of why the Cardinals are not performing right now is because they don't have the players to do so. They don't have their next Jim Edmonds. They don't have their next Albert Pujols. They don't have their next Scott Rowland. They thought they might, but they don't. So I'm curious, what did you make of the comments from Jim Edmonds earlier today?
I appreciate the honesty, and I think it's very apparent after hearing him and the examples we've gotten over the last few years that the Cardinals have lost their way a little bit. They have gotten away from making sure that the former players and Hall of Famers have been a massive part of their development. And they obviously have gotten a little bit too prideful in the success that they've had in the past and unwilling to make adjustments as the league has made adjustments. And now they're behind the eight ball and trying to catch up. But I also don't look at what Jim Edmonds said and say, okay, well, that's why this Cardinals team has been bad for the last 5 years. No, there are a lot more reasons why, and it starts with player development, player identification, and the inability to be aggressive when you need to be. We've seen over these last few weeks a lot of general managers in basketball and hockey willing to get aggressive for something that they feel benefits their team. And the Cardinals have shaken their head at that and say, nope, we don't want to make mistakes that we've made in the past. So the unwillingness to be aggressive and try and make mistakes is what's gotten the Cardinals into this position. And then I think stepping away from what's helped the development has also been a complementary piece to why the success has fallen apart.
We talked about this for about 30 minutes earlier today, so you can check out our full extended thoughts, including some from you guys as well via the mic drop feature. That is on the podcast page after the show today. You can always check us out on YouTube before, during, after, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. The Blues off tonight, back in action tomorrow. It doesn't get any easier. They've got a game against the Oilers tomorrow night, Alex.
Who do they got?
The Friday's game, to me, was everything you needed to know. They had an extended layoff. They had the bag skate day. They had a player traded. They had another one that was put through waivers, and then they come out needing one of their best periods of the season and had one of their worst. The win yesterday, cool. Glad they won. Just any one individual game at this point means so little to me, given how far back they have fallen within the wild card race.
The Blues' issues right now isn't the wins and losses. It's the habits and the details into the game that Jim Montgomery has talked about. And that Friday loss to Colorado, just like the loss to the Utah Hockey Club when they had the chance to win 3 in a row, that has left the game for the Blues in this last 7-game stretch. Talk to me when you get 3 wins, because when you get 3 wins, now the habits are starting to take over. And maybe you can go on a run, but I'm not going to get excited off of 1 win.
Mizzou's off tonight. They're back in action on a Wednesday night as a top 15 ranked team in the country. Whoa! They've officially passed T-Bone's Illini. We'll be talking about them more and more as the season progresses, because they are a team capable of making a run to the Elite Eight, and we'll certainly start breaking down the Super Bowl, which is next Sunday, a game that you'll be able to hear right here on 101 ESPN. Pre-game coverage for that one on Sunday right here on 101 ESPN at 1 o'clock. So we'll break that thing down as we go along here on BK and Ferrario. For T-Bone and Alex, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.